Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
Please, cried the girl. She didn't have enough strength to drag this woman into the entrance, but no one could help. The streets were deserted. Selena didn't understand why she was doing this. It was just the first thing that came to mind she put into action. She made one last push, and already the woman was outside the threshold of the entrance. You stink. The girl plucked her nose and wrinkled her nose. She got up and went home. How long am I going to wait for you? Jack shouted to his buddies. Where are you always in a hurry? The guys were just putting on their leather jackets and blazers. I don't like to be late. He stood by the car and stared at the wheels. Nobody's late for anything. Billy came out to him. They had a jammed arrow today. They needed to keep their faces on the ground. How many? Asked Jack about the number of people his friends had pulled up. 40 men, one of them shouted. That's enough, he spat and got into the car. It wasn't the first time they'd been together, so they knew what was going to happen. They drove up to a large warehouse. No one was there yet. They started to look around. Not a couple minutes later, cars came from both sides, shooting. Jack fell to the ground. He grabbed his shoulder. He just couldn't feel it. How? Hey, fell down next to him to take cover behind a car, buddy. I'll live. He pulled a gun from behind his belt. The fight was not for life. Many of them just did not come out of it alive. Get to the cars, the man in charge shouted. But Jack, Sam looked in the direction of the enemy. I said to the cars, then we'll deal with these creeps. He turned and looked at the asphalt, where several lifeless bodies lay. Everyone in the car was silent. No one wanted to talk about what had happened. One thing was clear, there was no need to ever rush into anything. Those guys were saved by the effect of surprise. They saw where and how Jack's men were standing. To the restaurant, the young man said sharply to the driver. They turned, stopped in front of a beautiful building. Jack got out of the car. His cronies followed him. Quiet music was playing in the room. No one was there. Waiter, Jack called irritably, because there was no one in the room at all. Now, a woman's voice was heard. And now she came out from around the corner. The young man fixed his eyes on her. A tall girl with a chiseled figure. Short black hair, snow-white skin, red lips, and a short skirt made her irresistible. Mine, Jack turned to his companions. What do you want? The girl approached and began to smile. You. The young man grabbed her by the waist and pulled her closer to him. What are you doing? I'll call the guards. She was afraid. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. He sat her down next to him. I can't sit here, she looked back. With me, everything is allowed. He looked at her and admired her. They ordered. When everything was on the table, Jack poured in shots to memorialize those who didn't come back with them tonight. Beauty, do you have a name? The waitress sat with them as they did so. Inga, she said, looked at him and smiled. What a beautiful name, and I'm Jack. I feel like you and I were made for each other. He nuzzled his nose into her neck. I think you'd have to know a person a little bit to say that, she coquetted. I don't need anything. I can see everything. He pressed himself against her again. Inge liked that kind of treatment. She had wanted someone to like her for a long time. Today was her first shift at the restaurant, and such luck. They sat at the table until the evening, and then Jack stood up and held out his hand to Inge. Are you with me? He asked. If he says that, he's not asking about tonight. He's asking about forever, whispered someone behind Inge. Yes, she gave him her hand and got up from her seat. He nodded his head. That meant no one was getting in the car with him. The two of them went there alone. The girl looked out the window. They drove past various stores and other storefronts. It seemed to her that this man would do anything for her. She would be happy in this life. Jack was generous. He spared nothing for his girl, buying clothes, flowers, gold, anything she wanted. Inga didn't know what he did, but it didn't matter to her. She simply idolized her young man. Does it hurt? She approached him when he entered the apartment. Go away, he could have snapped at her, but Inga didn't notice it. Let it pass her ears. Jack, let me blow on it, she said at him affectionately. Inga, there's nothing there. He wrinkled his nose as he moved his hand. Why are you doing all this? What if they kill you? That was what the girl feared more than anything. Spit, he glared at her until she did. I'll go, she went to the kitchen. Bring something to drink, he asked in a loud voice. Right now, Inga was happy to do anything for him. And let's get married. He took her in his arms. They had been together for almost 6 months. Sure, she kissed him on the nose. Then I'm telling the guys to make sure it's all good. He set her on the floor, slapped his palm on her butt, and stared after her. What are you doing? She turned around and made big eyes. To buy a wedding dress back then, you had to have quite a few connections or try really hard, but Jack had both. He made a couple of calls, and the next day Inga was trying on a white dress. So it's big for you sat next to her friend Oksana. She thought it would be just Are you stupid? It can be sewn, but no one else has it. Only me, she shouted at her friend. And don't yell at me, the girl got up, came to Inga and started to pull the fabric. Yes, this will be just right. They looked in the mirror. Jack was getting ready too. He bought a suit. He really didn't want to wear a tie. I feel like I'm going to put all this on, and then you'll put me in a coffin, he said. What are you talking about? Said his witness and best friend, Billy. All right, help me. The groom stood in front of him to tie his tie. What's there to do? The guy was twirling 2 ribbons in his hands. Oh, all right. Jack pulled it all off. Who made up that I have to wear a tie? That's right, supported his friend. They were ready. The cars were decorated too. Now all that was left was to pick up the bride and drive to the registry office. The groom could not embarrass himself in front of his friends and the rest of the gang, so the best restaurant in town was ordered. The wedding party sang and sang until the morning, and the next day the guests who urgently wanted okroshka and brine. Well, wife, now I need an hair, kissed her in the evening young man. There will be for you an hair and heiress. Inga laughed rinningly. Well, I'm on business. He went out and slammed the door. Not even 3 months later, as the girl realized that she was expecting a child, and she informed her husband about it. See, you can have it any time you want. He was drunk. Were you with the girls? She pulled a hair off his jacket. Look, don't start, huh? He turned to her. What do you mean, no start? She moved closer to him. If you want to have everything, and you were nothing for it, do not start, advised the husband to his wife. It was the first time Inga had seen him like this. She backed away, thinking it was better for her to stay away. You my wife, I will always come back here. And women are women. He went to his room. Such a turn, Inga did not consider such a turn in her fate. She didn't know what her husband was doing, but she knew that he had a lot of money, an apartment, and more than several cars. How are you? Jack asked her at breakfast. It could have been better. She didn't look up at him. Oh, are we offended? He pulled his chair closer to her. Don't be. She took his hand off her knee. Okay, he stood up and walked away again. The girl looked out the window at him walking to his car. The pregnancy and delivery had been easy. Jack, as always, had put his wife in the best hospital there was at the time. Well, hello, son. Jack greeted his wife and child from the maternity hospital. Inga saw that a lot of people had arrived. They were all family friends. Thank you, she kissed her spouse as he handed her a bouquet of flowers. They arrived home, where in one of the rooms stood an assembled crib, a table, and a small dresser. The mother immediately put the baby down and began to make everything to make them comfortable here. What are you doing? Jack entered the room. Like, a place for me and my son. She stopped and looked at him. There is no me and my son. There is us and my son. This is his room and he will be here alone. The man put the point. Inga was upset about this, but she realized that it was better not to argue with her husband. She spent her days in her son's room, and at night she went to her husband's room. Jack, I think I'm expecting a baby again, she whispered to him one evening. Arnold wasn't even 2 years old at the time. I'm just glad of that. He kissed her neck. Times had come to a point where it was very hard for ordinary people to live, and the Brawls got kind of pissed off. They started opening different firms, buying up everything, and the guns got tougher. Don't leave the house today, Jack warned his wife. Where are you going? She grabbed his arm. And I have to. He opened the door and left. Inga was very worried about her spouse. Over the past 2 months, they had already buried 4 friends. It was time to give birth. It was not scary, but exciting. Everything went exactly the same as the first time. Now the couple had a daughter, Julia. Billy came to meet Inga from the hospital. Why not Jack? The girl's eyes were very big. She was afraid to hear the worst thing in her life. Because he's being shepherded, looked Billy in the rearview mirror. I see. Inga leaned back in her seat and exhaled. They arrived home. Her husband was there. He greeted his wife and daughter, kissed her, and gave her flowers. I need you. Jack approached Inga a couple months after Julia showed up. Yes, she was always ready. Let's go. I asked a woman she'll watch the kids. He pulled her. Where to? The woman didn't understand. Soon you'll understand everything. They left the apartment, went downstairs, got into the car. We are now going to go sign the documents. Do not ask unnecessary questions, he warned her. I understand. She never asked anything unnecessary. When all matters were settled, Jack locked himself in his office and did not come out for a long time. Inga went to the phone, made sure no one was listening, and dialed Billy's number. Hello, she whispered. What, does Jack know you're calling? He immediately asked a question. No, tell him what's coming up. She realized long ago. Tomorrow there will be a big shoot. Probably no one will come back. After these words, he immediately hung up. Inga cried how she was alone with two small children in such a cruel world. It was unbearable to sit and just watch your husband prepare to die. Talk to me, she asked him. Not now. He turned away to avoid looking her in the eye. When tomorrow, she stared at him. What do you know? He guessed. Practically nothing. It's very serious, she sniffed. That's all. You don't need to know more. He still didn't turn to her. And he left. No kiss, no hug. Inge was offended. At home, the man did not return. The wife did not know what to do. She did not sleep, went from room to room. In the morning, when she lay down for a while, the doorbell rang. Inga jumped out of her seat like a stunned person and ran to open the door. A stranger stood outside the door. Inga? He looked at her. Yes, and who are you? Her legs became cotton. She realized that she was about to faint. Alexander. He made a gesture to show that he wanted to enter the apartment. Yes, of course. She let him pass her by. Yesterday, you probably know, there was a massacre at the abandoned factory. Only he and Billy survived from Jack's crew. But Sirioba's injuries are very serious. He's in the hospital, and Jack was taken. The young man lowered his head. How taken? Inga shrieked and started to get nervous. I don't know the details. I was only told to tell you about it. He left the apartment, went down the stairs and left, and the woman remained standing in the hallway. She went into the room to the children. Arnold was 6 and Julia was 3. She sat down on the couch that stood there, tears streaming from her eyes. Why hadn't he bothered to protect herself? Why had he let this happen? Mommy, what's wrong? Her daughter sat up next to her. Everything is fine, sleep. She looked at Arnold. He frowned and did not want to talk to anyone about anything. Inga waited for the trial and what would be assigned to her husband. The sentence was cruel, but the lawyers tried. They managed to reduce the sentence by 6 years. Jack had only 9 years left to serve. Don't cry. One of the wives of those who died pressed Inga to her breast. 9 years, she told herself. Inga, pull yourself together. The woman slapped her. What? She grabbed her face. Nothing. My husband died. I have children at home and everything else, and you are killing yourself, she shouted at the whole corridor. I'm sorry. She didn't know what else to say. She returned home. Nothing was interesting. The children came. She fed them, did laundry, cleaned up, did everything else. She was in no mood. Hello, she came to the phone in the evening. It had been 3 years since Jack had had his trial. You didn't wake her up? Billy called her. No, just put the kids to bed. She lied. Of course, she'd been asleep for a while. Can I come over to your place? Why are you avoiding it? Asked the guy. Okay. The girl finally gave in. To be honest, she liked this guy since the first time they met, but she'd never told anyone about it. If Jack chose her, she'd stay with him. She'd never been alone with Billy because she was afraid of herself. But now, he'd asked to come over. Hi, he stood on the doorstep with flowers. Why? She looked at the bouquet. Why, you're a woman, and you like flowers. He was talking nonsense. Come in. She took the bouquet and put it in a vase. How are you here? The young man came into the room. As you can see, she waved her hands. Until now, Inga had saved on everything, lived on the money that was still from Jack, and his friends helped whoever they could. Yes, not much. He listened to Inga's story. What did you want? She wanted him to leave. Just to meet, to talk, to see you. He came closer to her. Billy, you're his best friend. She looked into his eyes. And what should best friends do? The right thing to do, the right thing to support at any moment. He finished and pressed his lips to hers. The woman's body so missed the man's caresses, she sagged toward him. Billy picked her up in his arms and carried her to the couch. Don't, she whispered, but she couldn't tear herself away from his lips. You're so beautiful. He undid the buttons of her blouse. They kissed. Billy was so tender, and at some point Inga felt someone watching them. She turned her head toward the door. Arnold was standing there. I hate you, he said, grabbed something off the table and threw it at the couple. Son. She jumped up, but he'd already gone to his room. Don't mind him. He's just a kid. He'll forget. Billy pulled her back. What? Practically 10 years old, little, you name it. She didn't know what to do now. Okay, if you want, I can say your daddy went and left your mommy and I'll help you with everything. He put on his jeans. When is Jack coming out? She stared unblinking at the man. When it does, everyone will have forgotten everything by now, laughed Billy. Since he offered, Inga didn't refuse. The children and she would be provided for again. And she liked Billy. A week later, they moved in with Billy. Where are you going? The man asked her as she gathered in the hallway. To Jack's, she looked puzzled. To Jack's, forget that name, you're my woman now, he said simply. Then he would realize everything at once. Inga was afraid. Calm down, everything will be all right, I'm near. He came to her and helped her take off her coat. Of course, Billy was very self-confident. Arnold grew up a mean boy. He hated his mother because she betrayed his father, and he felt even more anger toward her new suitor. Why are you looking at me like that? Billy asked him when they were all sitting at the table together. Traitor, how could you? He trusted you with everything. You were his best friend, the boy said through gritted teeth. You're too young to talk about such things. The man smiled back. I'll grow up and kill you, the boy promised him. All right, agreed Billy. And so they lived. Julia was a quiet girl. She never fully understood why her brother hated these people. She loved her mother, and she was neutral toward Billy. But their quiet life ended when Jack came back. He was no longer the kind uncle who loved his wife and children. His son had written to him long ago to tell him what had become of his wife. All these years he dreamed of looking his friend and his wife in the eye. Well, weren't you waiting? He was standing in the doorway when Billy opened it. Jack, hi. He reached out his hands to him, but was immediately punched in the face. What are you doing? I meant well. His friend looked at him. Yeah, you did. He nodded and went inside the apartment. Inga was sitting in the room talking to her daughter. She saw Julia's eyes get big, turned around, flinched. Jack, what are you doing here? She knew this was going to be bad. It's you, what are you doing here? Pack up quickly and let's go home, he yelled. Where's Billy? She was shaking. Ha, show you him? The man returned to the corridor. He took his former friend by the scruff of the neck and threw him into the room. Inga saw that between his legs were all bloody. What have you done? She was so frightened that she didn't even think about the children seeing all this. The sooner you pull yourself together, the sooner I'll call an ambulance, he smirked. That's it, we're ready. Call it in, she thought. She could come back for her things next time. Whatever you say, darling. He went to the phone and dialed the right number. After that, together with the whole family, they went to the place where they used to live. And how could you think of such a thing? To leave me, ha? And to whom? To Seryoga? He could not calm down. Jack, I'm sorry. I thought it would be better for the kids. She lowered her head. Trust me, no one will be better off now. He laughed again. They arrived. They got out of the car. Inga could see people walking by. She wanted to shout for them to stop and help her, but there was no way to do it. Daddy, how glad I am that you came. Arnold did not leave him. Yes, son, but I'm not very glad. He turned his head toward his wife. She was standing by the mirror. What are you looking at? He shouted sharply. What are you doing? She turned around and didn't understand. He hit her on the back of the head with force. She banged her face against the mirror shattering it. Those were her first scars. Arnold, call an ambulance, she begged her son. You call it. He stood watching his mother bleed to death. Why are you so angry? She was crying. She was hurt and offended by everything that was happening. Inga saw that her daughter was dialing a number. A few minutes later, their doorbell rang. The doctors were horrified at what had become of the woman's face. But she didn't say who had done it. Slipped on the floor and fell, she told the medic. Yes, she nodded. How bad? She looked up at the medic. Badly, he nodded. Scars. Tears came to her eyes again. There will be. The medic didn't hide it. She returned home with a bandaged face. Julia came to her. She sat next to her mom and stroked her arm. What, Mommy, are you paying for your mistakes? Arnold stood in the doorway. What did I ever do to you? She didn't understand. It hurt to speak, so she turned away and didn't want to say or hear anything else. Jack was busy again with some business. His capital had already increased during the time he had been in the out-of-the-way places, and now they were increasing. He was buying apartments, renting them out, cars, reselling them, whatever he could get his hands on. Why do you put up with all this? Get away from him, Julia said, when the years of school were coming to an end. Do you think he'd let me do that? The woman's body was a wreck. Her husband did nothing but beat her, beating her, tearing her skin, putting out cigarette butts on her legs, back and neck. Inga cried, but it didn't help. She endured. Julia felt sorry for her mom, but there was nothing she could do either. The girl wanted so much to get out of this house quickly, not to see all these faces surrounding her again, except her mom, of course. I wish you, daughter, never to experience such a thing. Her mother kissed Julia. Don't come home unnecessarily. Julia hugged her mother. She didn't need anything from her father or anyone else. She had finished school. Now she was about to enroll. She wasn't going home. Arnold never left his father's side for a minute. When he felt his shoulder next to him, he was so arrogant and cocky. When the man wasn't around, he was silent all the time. We should change the car. He hinted to his father that he needed a new car. I'll take care of it myself. The man stopped him. In the evening, when the table was set, the two of them sat at it. Inga did not come out. Why do you put up with her? Arnold asked Jack. Don't you know? The man was very surprised, for he knew that his son stuck his nose in everywhere he could. Believe me, no, thought he. So for love, bit off a piece of meat the young man. You saw her, what love, and what a beauty she was. The man savored these words. So why? The boy kept up. Then, when the hunt for me began, I signed everything over to your mother, so that I had nothing to take from me. It's a good thing she didn't know what she was signing to, or they'd have ripped me off with Billy, he said, his jowls moving. I can see why you're so fond of her. Arnold got up from the table. He'd been out a lot lately, traveling to different parties. He didn't arrive alone this morning. Dad, meet Diana. He introduced the girl. For an hour or all day? Mickey asked. You what? This is my girlfriend, said the son, offended. Ah, well, if it's a girl, then come in. He pointed to the sofa, which stood in the living room. Diana got acquainted with the mother of her young man. Oh, she came out of the bathroom when Inga was walking down the hall. Don't be afraid, said the woman in a hoarse voice. What's wrong with you? Diana looked at her. Husband and son tried, she said openly. God, the girl even lost the power of speech. Think many times before becoming his wife, Inga warned her. Excuse me, she went to her room. Slava liked that he now had a girlfriend. He spent a lot of time with her, wanted her to be his wife, but also that it was very early to propose to her. Arnold, why don't we go for a walk today? Diana chirped cheerfully. Okay, we'll go for a walk, just a little later. He didn't want to go anywhere, just to lie on the bed with her. All right, suit yourself, then I'll go. She already wanted to leave the room, but Arnold didn't let her. He threw a slipper and the doors closed. You're not going anywhere, I told you later. He looked at her and got angry. Slavachka, what are you doing? Diana was scared. Nothing, Diana, he mocked her. She walked over and sat down on the bed next to the guy. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to him with a sharp pull. It hurts, she wrinkled her nose. Me too, he started kissing her. Diana did not push him away, on the contrary. She began to reciprocate. The girl realized that one wrong action and he would just throw her to the trash. "Hello, can I sit here?" The girl came to Inga's room. "Did you hit her?" she guessed. "No, just a fight." The girl averted her eyes. "Yes, I know how he quarrels," sighed the woman. They sat in the room for a few minutes in silence. "What am I to do?" asked Diana at last. "Nothing, run or endure for the rest of your life." She pointed with her hand to her face. After that, the woman and Inga began to communicate well. "Arnold proposed to me," she showed me the ring. "You'd be a fool to marry him," the mother said quite seriously. "But I love your son," she said confusedly. "Yes, I thought I did too." Inga smiled a little. "Will you help me prepare for the gala?" She hoped for the woman's support. Of course, the woman never refused anyone. But the next day Arnold announced that there would be no celebration. They would just get married and sit here as a family. Would we invite Inga? The bride was sure of it. Of course not. The son wrinkled his nose. Good. Again the girl swallowed everything. On the weekend, they went to the registry office. If Diana wore a beautiful dress and arranged her own hair, Arnold was in stretchy sweatpants and a t-shirt. Could you dress normally? She didn't understand. And so it will do. You love me not for money and not for clothes, he winked at her. What a fool you are. Why are you like your father? Your mother has suffered so much and you are there. Diana got angry. They signed. They were now husband and wife. They came home, as Arnold wanted. There was a huge table in the hall, bursting with hors d'oeuvres. Only Jack was there to greet them. Well, hello, children. He hugged the two at once. Let's eat already, sat down at the table the groom. And I have a present for you. The father left the room. He came back with a box, handed it to his son. It was the keys to a new car. Thank you, Dad. I've wanted it for so long. The young man rejoiced at the gift like a child. Diana looked at the two relatives and waited for something to be given to her. But it turned out that there were no more presents. It was a shame. In the evening, she went to Inga's room and took some cake to treat her. Thank you, my daughter. But in the morning, you'll realize what kind of husband you've chosen for yourself, the woman said. No, we'll be fine, the girl assured her. Yes, the woman stood and nodded. She knew her son better than anyone and what he was capable of. I can't even imagine that your own son could do this to you, Diana told the woman. Believe me, he may not have done much physically, but mentally he was killing me to the point where I just wanted to lie down and do nothing else. Inga turned away to the window. Perhaps she could cry now, if there were still tears left. As Diana said goodbye to her, she left the room. The girl had no idea that all the things she had said today were to be experienced by her. Where have you been? She entered the room and heard the voice of her drunken husband. Arnold, what are you doing? She came up to him like a pussycat. What? That's what he hit her in the face. She flew right back to the door. The girl was lying there, looking at the young man with frightened eyes. What do you think you're doing? She started to get up, but he wouldn't let her. You went to see her, didn't you? Do you want to become like her? Only I turn away, immediately to my friend you will go away. Stood over her and spoke haughtily. What friend? You don't even have any friends. Diana didn't understand anything. No friends. Again she received a blow in the side. Soon will appear. Do not worry. And now go, wash up, and go to bed. I'm tired. Diana stood under the hot shower. Tears flowed down her cheeks. She didn't know what to do now. Inga was right when she said he was like that. Why did she take this step? Why did she marry him? Why did she pretend to some riches? And life, what about it? She couldn't stay in that shower forever. She had to get out at some point anyway. And Diana was out of there. Arnold was already asleep on the bed. She breathed a sigh of relief and lay down next to him. In the morning, he got up as if nothing had happened, kissed his wife, and told her that they were going down for breakfast together now. She couldn't bear to look at him. Right after breakfast, she went to her mother-in-law's house again. Oh, did my predictions come true? She looked at the girl's lip. Yes, you were right. He was drunk last night, and everything happened as you said. Diana is ashamed to admit it. Inga came up to her, pressed her against her, stroked her head. At that moment, the door opened. On the threshold stood the son. What are you? What are you teaching her here? Shouted at his mother Arnold. It's time for you to calm down. I'm not teaching anyone anything, and I myself did nothing wrong. I only wanted you and Julia to be happy," she told him in a calm voice. He grabbed her by the hair and pushed her. Her mother fell down. She didn't want to get up because she knew that this blow would be followed by another one. Arnold grabbed his wife's hand and they left that room. Inga got up. She didn't know what to do, so she went to her husband's office. "Jack, can I come in?" she asked at the door. "What do you want?" He looked at her sideways. "I want to talk to you." She sat down in the chair across from him. "Talk. No one's stopping you," he told her in a rough voice. "Why do you keep me here? Let me go. You are doing well. Why do you need me here in this house?" The woman did not understand. "Why, and you still don't understand why I keep you here?" And he told her all about the documents and the money. "I'll rewrite it all back," she said. "No, darling, I don't want to lose everything I've worked so hard for," he laughed in her face. "Am I to suffer with you for the rest of my life? So I will do it all without your help." She abruptly turned around and went to the exit. Come on, you'll only make our lives easier," her husband said to her. She ran down the steps and cried. She would never wish such a fate as hers on anyone. In her room, she opened the closet, took out a sash, tied it to the radiator. And the worst part was that she didn't have the fortitude to do it to herself. She sat down helplessly by that radiator and cried in her voice. In the evening, when father and son were conferring in his study, Diana came to her again. "Why did you come here again? Didn't you get enough of it last time?" "I'm quiet. They are in a meeting in the office." She pressed her finger to her lips. At that moment, the girl's eyes slid to the floor. She saw the belt. "Go." Her mother-in-law pushed her towards the door. "You what?" She stared at Inga. "Nothing. Didn't have the guts," the woman admitted. Diana walked out of her room, eyes widened. She imagined what could happen now. Would she have to suffer the same way for the rest of her life? The girl cried for the first time in this house just for fun, out of thought. She went out into the garden, where it was very beautiful. Arnold joined her a few minutes later. "Where are you going?" he asked casually. "Nowhere, I just decided to walk here." She looked at the green bushes. "If you go anywhere without my knowledge, you'll be fine," he said knowingly. "Arnold, I don't want to be your wife anymore." She looked at him pleadingly. "Why not? You've been pleasing me, all to get me to propose. And now what's happened?" He made a perplexed face. "Let me go, please." She put her hands together. "As soon as I get bored of you, you'll go straight to all four sides." He turned around and went into the house. "Fool," Diana said to herself, and followed her husband. After that, further married life consisted of one thing. He came home. Diane slept with him. She was no good for anything else, according to Arnold. When there was no one else in the house, he and Inga would gather in the kitchen. They might even drink wine and gossip. But that was very rare. Usually both of them were in their rooms. Julia was by this time well into her studies. She knew that she could only rely on herself, so she had to get a profession. "Did you get in?" asked her friend, whom they had met on the train on their way here. "I don't know." Julia stood with her back to the board where the results were hanging. "Girlfriend, I congratulate you. And I got in just to another college. It's across the street." She pointed her finger at the building. At this point, Julia was finally able to tune in and turned around. She had indeed gotten in. "Shall we celebrate?" Nika pressed her. "Okay, just not tonight. I have a headache," she complained. "Well, how boring you are," took offense girlfriend. "Tomorrow or at the weekend we'll go somewhere," Julia said. "Aren't you going home?" Nika asked. "No. I don't want to talk to my parents," the girl confessed. "I see, but I'm going. So it's not fate." They laughed together. Julia did not want to shirk her studies. She chose the profession herself. She entered it herself, and now she wanted to finish it herself. But sometimes fate gives surprises you don't expect. They had a celebration at the college, dedication to students. It was fun, a concert, and afterwards, a disco. Julia had so much fun that she forgot about the time. When she looked at her watch, it was past 11. She ran to the dorm. No, the stern janitor mothballed her from the window. "Well, please," the girl begged her. "I won't let her in." The woman stepped away from the window and walked away. Julia looked around. It was dark and cold outside. She didn't know where to go. She wandered to the nearest 5-story building, at least in the entryway to keep warm. There she sat down on the steps and dozed off. "Who are you?" A guy came up. "Nobody," the girl snapped at him. "Well, nobody, what are you doing here?" He sat down next to her. You could hear that he smelled of alcohol. "Leave me alone. They didn't let me into the dorm, so I'm sitting here." She didn't want to talk. "Let's go." He took her hand. "Where to?" She didn't want to go, so she started to pull away. "Don't be afraid, silly." He looked at her and smiled. Julia followed him. She wasn't. At least she'll be warm. "Here, I live alone. You can stay here." He led her into his apartment. "Thank you," she said quietly. The guy went to the kitchen, put the kettle on, went out into the corridor and watched her take off her shoes and jacket. "Let's go. I'll make tea," he called her. They walked through, sat down at the table. The young man made tea, put it in front of Julia. "Carlo," he sat down opposite. Julia. She took a small sip of tea and burned herself. "So here's to introductions." He raised his cup. "Aha." She sat back and looked into hers. Carlo bedded the girl on the couch. She didn't want to sleep, a little afraid. But as soon as her head touched the pillow, she just passed out. "Wake up, sleepyhead. You'll sleep through everything." The guy woke her up in the morning. "Yes." Julia jumped up. "Where is she? What's wrong with her?" "I had a lot of questions in my head." "Don't worry, you haven't been drinking," he laughed. "I have to go to school." She started packing the things she had taken off yesterday before going to bed. "Will you meet me today?" he asked as he walked her to the door. "I don't know." She looked up at him. At that moment, something clicked inside. Why hadn't she noticed yesterday that he was so handsome? "Well, I know where you live. I'll come get you." He opened the door for her. Julia came out. From that moment, the girl couldn't help thinking about Alexei. She waited for him, but he did not come. The next day, she also waited for him, but again, he was not there. "What's going on with you?" Sarah, her roommate, asked her. "I think I'm in love." She didn't want to tell anyone how she felt. "With whom?" She was surprised because Dashka was either at school or in the dormitory all day long. "Remember when I didn't sleep at home?" the neighbor looked. "Yes," she nodded. "So Julia told me everything." "You have to be so naive. It's good. At least nothing happened in the apartment." Shook her head neighbor. "You don't understand anything." The girl was offended. "Okay, but you understand a lot." She turned her back to the wall. A month passed and Carlo never showed up. Even though the houses were next to each other, Julia never saw him. "There came to you." Went up to their room on duty. "Who?" Surprised the girl. She knew that a friend from a neighboring college could come, but she said she would be busy. "Some guy." The girl smiled. Julia's heart beat faster in her chest. She put on her slippers and went out. "Hi." Carlo was standing there, flowers in his hands. "Hello." She walked up to him, looking around to make sure no one saw anything. It seemed to her that everyone knew that she had been waiting for him for so long, and he had come only now. "Why are you so pensive?" he asked her. "No, I'm fine." Julia smelled the flowers. "Will you come with me for a walk?" he asked her. "I don't know," she shrugged. "Come on, I'll tell you where I've been." He pulled her by the arm, just like that time in the entryway. "Okay, I need to change." She took her hand out of his and ran upstairs. "What, you're here?" the roommate asked. "And I'll ask you to be jealous in silence." Julia laughed and left the room. They walked through the streets of the city. Carlo chattered incessantly. "I'm sorry I didn't come. I was sent on a business trip, so I was there all this time." He turned to her, and now he was walking ahead of her. "Why are you telling me this?" "I don't care." She made an indifferent look. "Thought you were waiting." The guy saddened. "Come on." "Waited a couple days." She told him the secret. "Well, I'm here, and now I'm not going anywhere." Carlo was so happy, talking all the time, laughing. "Okay." They had been outside for hours. The girl was freezing. "Shall we go to my place?" he asked her as they walked towards the dorm. "Let's not tonight." She didn't want to rush things. "Okay, whatever you say." He led her to the door, and then the young people stood opposite each other for a long time. Julia was thinking, even waiting for him to kiss her, and Carlo was in thought. He certainly wanted that kiss, but he was afraid to scare her off. They just said goodbye. The heart in the girl's chest was pounding, even pounding. She thought everyone could hear it. She had finally and irrevocably fallen in love with him. Now Carlo came for her every evening. They either went for a walk or went to his place. Why don't you want to move? It's better in an apartment than in a dormitory. Every time he asked. You know, I'm used to it. She was telling the truth. Okay, I'll wait. He was stubborn. So wait, she said, like a queen. But after New Year's Eve, the girl agreed and they started living together. How happy I am, you can't even imagine. The guy woke up every morning. Enough for me to talk about it. I'm happy too, she told him and kissed him after that. With her parents, Julia never communicated. She didn't think she needed to. She felt sorry for her mom. She thought she was going to get on her feet and take her in. Why are you so sad? Carlo had seen her like that a lot. No, you just thought she was looking away so he wouldn't see her tears. Well, that's your business. I won't interfere. After saying that, he climbed out from under the blanket and went to the kitchen. Julia looked at her lover and could not understand how such a chance meeting could bring her to such a wonderful man. You don't know anything about him, her friend told her. So what? I can see the man, Julia countered. Okay, that's your business. The girl dismissed her. From that moment on, Julia stopped talking to everyone from her past circle. She gave all of herself to Carlo. Why don't you ever talk about your parents? Carlo asked her once. I don't want to. I'm not doing well there. She didn't want to deceive him. Okay, I'm not bothering you. He kissed her. One day, Julia went to the store. On the way, she met a classmate. They walked together, talking about something on the way. Carlo came home at that moment, knew where his girlfriend went out to meet her and saw this picture. Who was that? He asked her at home. An acquaintance we studied together. She was sorting out bags. And why she did not pay attention to this situation, Julia still does not know. In the summer, after the first course, the young man proposed to his beloved. She, of course, agreed. What kind of wedding do you want? He asked her a week after the proposal. None, she laughed. What do you mean? You're turning me down. You could see the guy was angry. I just don't want it. She was honest with him. Oh, you scared him, he exhaled. They filed the application. Julia was very worried that she couldn't tell her mom about it, but she thought she would definitely visit her sometime. After the marriage, the young people didn't go anywhere. They just went on with their lives. We're so boring, Julia said to Carlo. What do you miss? He asked. I don't know, she sat on the couch and shrugged. If you want, you can go out, he suggested. Well, she was going to ask him about it, but she didn't have the guts. The girls had been asking her to go out for a long time, and this weekend she promised them she would. That day she came home from school and started to get dressed up. In this skirt you will not go anywhere, stood in the doorway of the room husband. Why? The girl didn't understand. It wasn't short. Because I said so. He was insistent. Okay, she obediently changed her clothes. As Julia walked out, Carlo kissed her, said love, and closed the doors. It was so nice to get away from this domestic routine. Julia just danced. She didn't think about anything. She rested her mind and body. This evening she enjoyed her freedom. She was coming home and didn't expect what was waiting for her there. I'm home. She entered the apartment. Did you have a good time? Her drunken husband came out into the hallway. Carlo, you let me go, didn't you? She didn't know what was going on. Yes, I did. I thought you'd say no, that you'd spend time with me. His tongue was slurring. What's going on? She went into the room. There was a table by the couch, and on it were some shots and a bottle. I'm out. As you can see, I'm having fun. Who were you with? He grabbed her arm. What are you doing? You're hurting me. Fear appeared in her eyes. She remembered how her father used to beat her mother when she was a child. Oh, you, he pushed her. Julia didn't wait for him to continue. She grabbed her shoes and ran out of the apartment. She didn't know where to go. There was only one option, the dorm. Hello, can't you let me in? She asked the janitor. If only for a visit. She looked at the desk clerks. Thank you. Julia began to think about what she should do. When the former roommate came out to her, she quickly told her everything, asked her to find a way out. So here is the address. There lives my good acquaintance. Say that from me and tell everything. She gave her a piece of paper. Thank you. The girls hugged each other. Julia was scared to go because there was a guy there again, not a girl. But she had no other choice, so she went. Hello, they met. Julia told Michael everything. He stepped in and let her spend the night. Thank you. She thanked him in the morning she left. She thought she would never need his help again. Just as Julia thought, Carlo found her at her studies. While they were in public, he spoke to her affectionately, asked her questions, but without pressure. At home, it started all over again. The only consolation was that he was sober. Why do you behave like this? Julia could not understand in her head. Such a nice and caring, before the wedding, a young man became inadequate as soon as he put a ring on his finger. And you? He asked her a counter question. What about me? She looked at him. The conversation was not working. Going everywhere, unknown with whom and where you sleep. Tell me, where were you today? He came very close. At a friend's, she didn't want to lie because it could be worse. You see, at a friend's, he emphasized the last syllable. Julia went to the kitchen. She didn't want to talk. It was all empty. The girl wouldn't prove anything. Carlo didn't go after her. After that, they didn't talk for about a week. And then Carlo came home with flowers. What's the occasion? Julia came out into the hallway. I'm sorry, my love, I overreacted. He handed her the bouquet. Good, she really thought, that he understood and realized everything. But it didn't last long. There was a corporate party at her husband's work. You're coming with me tomorrow, he told her. I have an extreme session coming up. I can't not prepare for it. She looked up at her husband. Nothing. One evening will not decide anything. Everyone will be there with their wives, insisted the young man. All right, Julia agreed with him. The next day, she put on a beautiful dress, painted her eyes and lips, and went out to Carlo. Wow, what a beauty you are. He opened his arms to hug her. Let's go already, she laughed. The evening was fun. At first, everyone was just sitting around the tables, making speeches. Then the music started, and everyone got on the dance floor. Julia tried to behave so no one would say anything to her husband. How I envy Carlo, a representative man approached her. Yes, Julia turned to him, a smile on her face. Yes, at that moment slow music played. The man held out his hand to her. She didn't refuse. They started moving to the tune. At some point, Julia saw her husband. He was standing there, all red. His jaundices were going in different directions. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt our dance, Julia said quickly to the stranger. What a pity, he saw her off with his eyes. What do you think you're doing? Boiled Carlo. He was pretty drunk again. Beloved, calm down. She was afraid that the scandal would start right here. Let's go home. They walked towards the exit. The man who had just danced with Julia caught up with them. Sorry, you left it. He held out the hairpin to her. Thank you, she smiled. At this point, the young man couldn't take it anymore. He swung around and punched the man in the jaw with all his might. The man went flying, and for some reason, the image of Billy, whom her father had dragged into the room in bloody pants, came to Julia's mind. He yelled when he saw Julia running away from him. He caught up with her, waited for a cab to pull up, put her in the car, and they drove home. As always, Carlo was silent in front of anyone, but at home, he was on the loose. Stop. She yelled at the whole house, but no one could hear her. What's wrong with you? In the morning, Carlo went into the kitchen to get a drink of water. Julia was lying on the couch. When he didn't hear an answer, he walked over. He pulled the blanket open and recoiled, sat down next to her, grabbed his head. Julia lay there, her face resembling a bloody mess. What have I done? Carlo went to the phone and called an ambulance. Thank God the girl was alive. They put her in the hospital. As soon as Julia felt a little better, could see and walk, without asking anyone, the girl just ran out of there. She drove home to her parents' house, thinking that if Carlo was there looking for her, her father would still intercede. Whatever their relationship, she's his daughter. Hey, she came in the house. What happened to your face? Her brother asked her from the door. Nothing. She walked up the steps to her mom's house. Julia rushed to her Inga. She first hugged and then pulled her daughter aside to look. It can't be, she cried. Maybe, apparently it's fate, she cried. Everything will be all right. Ask your father for help. He won't refuse, the mother advised. The father, when his daughter turned to him, thought of nothing better than to send her out of the country. First, they formalized their divorce, and then Julia flew abroad for a few months. As expected, Carlo arrived, It was unclear why he procrastinated so long. Inga assumed he simply hadn't visited his wife in the hospital. "Where's my wife?" He burst into the house and was immediately punched in the face. "This is my house, and only I can raise my voice here." Jack came out to him. "Where's Julia?" Carlo clamped his nose. "That's something you'll never know," said the man sternly. "What are you keeping a guest on the doorstep?" Came out to them. "Arnold, come in." They all sat together in the house. In Carlo's hands was a glass with something strong. "Tell me, what happened?" Julia's brother said. Carlo began to mutter to himself that he was jealous and drunk. He couldn't help himself. "And the last time I broke the CEO's face, I got fired, and I couldn't get over it." He looked up at them. "Yeah, the story." Jack looked at him. He didn't know what to do. "Okay, Julia's not home. Here's my card. Come on, buddy. Go home. Call me if you need anything." Arnold escorted him out of the house. Carlo drove home. He had new friends now. Inga continued her existence in the house with her husband, son, and daughter-in-law. They were communicating with the girl already openly. Jack and Arnold let the situation go. "Mom, I'm pregnant." Diane came to her room one day. "Don't tell him. Have an abortion," the woman begged her. "What are you talking about? I want this baby." Her daughter-in-law's eyes bulged. "You wanted to marry Arnold too?" The woman shook her head again. "No, I'll give him a son, and he will calm down." The girl stood her ground. As you know, Inge didn't care anymore. She was waiting for her husband to hit her someday so that she wouldn't wake up. Diana sat in her room. She wanted to share her joy with everyone. She decided to call an old friend. "Hello, Natalie," she said into the phone. "Diana, where have you been?" She was surprised to hear from her. "I got married and now I'm expecting a baby," she bragged. "How do you feel about us coming to visit you?" asked her friend. "I don't even know." She glanced at the door. "I don't want to hear anything. We'll come to your place tonight. You can meet your husband," Natalie said. "Arnold, we're having friends over tonight," she said quietly to her husband. "What friends do we have?" He was very surprised. "Mine from school." She thought he wouldn't mind. She had to socialize with someone. "Look at me." He gave her a look that sent shivers down her spine. Diana was glad he didn't forbid it. She got ready for the evening. Jack was frowning. Something had been weighing on him lately. "What's the party?" he asked. "We have friends coming," she said cheerfully, "and yes, you'll be a grandfather soon." After these words, she thought that the man would somehow be happy, but he just looked at her and passed by. "What did you just say?" Arnold was coming down the stairs. "Yes, you're going to be a dad. I wanted to surprise you." She expected her husband to hug or kiss her, but he, like his father, didn't react in any way. The friends arrived in the evening. When Diana saw that there were young men among them, she thought her husband would not be very happy. "Wow, what a house you have!" Natalie walked everywhere. Inga came down the hall. No one had warned her that there would be guests, so she was immediately embarrassed. "Who's that?" A startled Natalie approached her friend. "The mother-in-law," she said simply. "What's wrong with her face?" A common question that came up to everyone who saw her for the first time. "Ignore it," Diana asked her. "Okay." They continued the party. After the feast, everyone moved outside. There was going to be a kebab. "Diana, wow, you got the guy." He came up to her and slapped her. "What are you doing?" She looked back so that her husband did not see, but at that moment she ran into his gaze. "Friends, thank you for coming." Arnold immediately began to speak. "But we haven't cooked the meat yet." We're all upset. "We'll do it another time," Arnold promised. When everyone had left, he took his wife under his elbow and they returned to the house. His father was gone, away on business. "What do you think you're doing? You brought your lover into the house so you can see what a dear my husband is?" He attacked her. "What are you talking about?" Diana already knew how it would end. Inga heard shouting downstairs, came out of her room and went there. "Arnold, leave her alone. She's expecting a baby." She approached her son. "What? Who's yapping?" He turned to the woman. "Don't," shouted Diana. At that moment, the young man hit his mother in the face with such force that she flew to the stairs and bumped her head. "Don't what?" Arnold was already upset. "Don't touch." She covered herself with her hands, but it was too late. "You'll know how to bring men into the house." He sat down on the sofa. When neither his mother nor Diana got up from the floor, he got nervous His father wasn't around to ask for advice. The young man stood up, walking over to the woman first, blood oozing from her head. "Get up," he prodded his wife. "Fuck you." Diana saw that she was bleeding too, only downstairs she understood. "Fuck you. I'll go to you now." And again the shock and darkness. The woman and the girl woke up in the hospital. Inga had a severe concussion and Diana had lost her baby. "What are you doing?" Jack started yelling at his son. "You weren't there. What was I supposed to do?" The boy whined. "Okay, we'll figure something out." He pulled out a briefcase. When the doctor came in to see Inge, she was lying there staring at him with empty eyes. "Will you be writing a statement?" he asked her. "What statement?" She pretended not to understand. "I see." He left the room. Diana was crying. She knew she didn't want to be with this man anymore, but how to get rid of him, she didn't understand. "I write a statement or we get a divorce." She gave him an ultimatum. "We'll see." He wanted to say something to her, but he turned and left the room. "We have to do something," Jack said to his son at home. "What do you mean?" Arnold didn't understand. "With your mother, she's got a bad headache. She won't do anything now," the man was sure. "What's the plan?" The young man was ready to listen. "First, you must divorce your wife. You do not need her, only problems," advised the father. "Well, I was going to do that myself," he admitted. "After that, find your new friend, Carlo, I think, who lived with Dashka. We will give him the most difficult task," the man said point by point. "Understood," Arnold smiled. After the conversation with his father, he began to immediately put the plan into practice. First, he went and negotiated a divorce. It didn't take long. "Hey," he walked into Diane's room. "What do you want?" She was very angry with him. "Here." He put an envelope of money on the table. "I filed for divorce, you're free. Here's some money for the first time." "Did he say everything?" She looked at him contemptuously. "Yeah, he didn't even say goodbye. He just walked out of the room, that's all." After that, he looked at his mother. She was lying in bed smiling. He realized what his father was talking about. Arnold left the hospital and immediately called Carlo. An unemployed guy could use the money. "You got it?" He talked to him. "Yes, as soon as you call, I will be at your place," promised the young man. That was the end of their agreement. It remained to wait for Inga to be discharged from the hospital. They didn't have to wait long. Not even 2 weeks later, she was already home. "Hi," Jack said hello to her. She just walked past him, humming something to herself. "Crazy," Arnold said it after her. "Shut up," his father put his finger to his lips. In the evening, Carlo arrived. "Now listen carefully," Jack began to say. "Now you go to your ex-mother-in-law. Tell her you want to talk. As if you feel bad after the divorce with Dashka. Cry, bring tea. Beforehand, dissolve this in hot liquid. No one will ever figure it out." After his words, Jack gave Carlo a capsule with a clear liquid. "Do I have to kill her?" The boy was frightened. "Think about it." Arnold showed him a thick envelope with money. "And why do you need it?" Did not understand the young man. "After her death, we will receive the inheritance," said Jack. "I see." Carlo understood everything now. Today, he spent the night in this house, and for tomorrow the plan was to be executed. Carlo went to Inga's room after lunch. He asked if he could come in. She smiled. "Hello." He entered then uninvited. "Come in." She sat him on a chair. "Do you remember me?" "I'm your daughter's ex-husband." He was nervous, and Inge sat looking at him, happiness on her face. And then Carlo started crying. How bad he felt, how tired he was, and all the other things Jack had told him. "How about some tea?" he asked. Wouldn't say no. She looked at him. Now he left the room. In the kitchen he did as he was told. "There's our tea." He brought a tray of cups and cookies into the room. "Look, I had a delicious roll in the cupboard," the woman asked. "Okay." He got up, but he didn't find any roll there. "Well, I have to go." They finished their tea. The young man got up from his seat and went to the door. At that moment, the woman just fell off her chair. Carlo came down the stairs. He was happy. Arnold handed him his fee. After that, he advanced home. "What now?" The son looked at his father. "We'll wait until night and take her out into the woods," the man said. Until then, Inga lay on the floor. All evening, Arnold agonized over what would happen to them if anything came to light. But he looked at Jack and realized that if he was calm, there was nothing to worry about. When night fell, they loaded the woman's body into the car and drove away. They drove far away so that no one they knew would find her. This would be fine, Jack said. His plan was to leave the woman here and report her missing a few days later. Doctors would confirm that she was insane, left home on her own, got lost, froze, and died. That's it, we have no more burdens. The man shook off his hands. You're right, they got in the car and drove home. Early in the morning, the forester went around his property, looking to see if anything was caught in the traps. When he reached the edge of the forest, he saw a beast lying on the ground and came closer. Lord, he began to be baptized. He sat down and looked at the woman. He didn't know what to do with her. The old man pulled up his wagon. He loaded the woman into it. He was afraid that he would be blamed for the death of this unfortunate woman. He saw that on the outskirts of the city, there was a place where homeless people were fed and hot lunches were brought to them. So he decided to take the woman there. Who are you? Inga opened her eyes, and several overgrown and bad-smelling people were leaning over her. We found you here, squeaked one of them. And who am I? She looked at her hands. She's not well at all, said an old man with a large beard. He might not have been an old man, but the look of him said so. Inga was lifted to her feet, dizzy and cold. She was shivering. Come with me. The same man held out his hand to her. Good. There was no tooth on tooth. Inge poured hot tea, so she joined the company. Don't you remember anything at all? Her new friends asked her. No, she shook her head and smiled all the time. Poor thing, everyone felt sorry for her. Everyone here was friendly. If food was brought in, pandemonium ensued. But when a cup of hot food fell into Inga's hands, she simply enjoyed it. She had a warm jacket. It was a few sizes too big, but it was so warm. Come on, a man called out to her. Apparently, he was not all right in the head either, because he kept telling everyone that he was an academician. With him, Inga began to communicate closely. They were always together, sleeping, eating. Where did you lose your fiancé? The volunteers laughed. Who brought hot lunches? None of your business, Inga answered them. Now she didn't look any different from her companions. She was wearing the same rags. It was impossible to walk in them, but no one offered her anything else. And where were you from? Sometimes Inga asked the boys, who were so kind as to pour tea and offer bread. From the city. They didn't want to talk to her. I used to live in the city too. The woman rolled her eyes. Good. They didn't believe it. In the evening, Steve, with whom Inga was always together, offered her a bottle. Where did you get it? The woman wondered. It's not there anymore. He squinted slyly and took a sip. Come on, Inga wanted to warm up. It was winter ahead. It was getting colder. After a short conversation, Steve suggested that Inga leave this company and live alone. Don't tell me you're taking me to your academic apartment, laughed the woman. Look at Hugh. What kind of academic would look at Hugh? He showed his toothless mouth as he smiled. But still, they made it. Moved closer to the city. Here you could beg by the subway and beg around caves. Well, aren't you sorry? Steve looked at his companion. Soon it will be winter. What are we going to do? Go to the basement? Inga asked him once. Why didn't you say anything before? Exactly, it's warm there. The man tapped himself on the forehead. They came to one of the houses. The cellar was open, not like in many other houses. They settled there for a while. Now Inga didn't refuse when Steve brought a bottle. Once she took not one sip, but two. What are you doing? He poked her in the chest. Leave me alone, the woman said in a drunken voice. Oh, you, he pushed her. Inga collapsed on her side, lay like that. Sometimes she saw the janitor sweeping the yard, thought that she could also. Maybe they would have allocated a place for housing. But she didn't dare to come up and ask. That's how she lived with Steve. What's up, old girl? He coming all stinky and wet. Where have you been? She was very hungry. He wanted to say something else, but he took a step, stumbled, and fell. Inga came out of the cellar. It was very cold. She wrapped herself in the same jacket that she had once gotten. The woman was walking down the street. Everyone was avoiding her. She was very hungry and warm. Inga did not know how long she wandered like that. She entered some yard. She wanted to find a cellar to warm up a little. She went to the entrance. It was very slippery. Inga didn't realize how she slipped and fell to the ground. What happened next is unknown. Selena lived with her mom. She wanted to get married or at least find a young man who would take her away from home. Everything was fine until recently when her mother brought a man into the house. "Mom, he's hitting on me," peeping in the shower, complained her daughter to her. "What are you talking about?" The woman didn't believe her. She was so happy that in her old age she had met a life partner. Her daughter had grown up. She was in college. It was time to think about her own life. "Find someone else," her mother told her. "Yes, you think that someone would be waiting for me around the corner?" Selena answered her sadly. "Well, let's get you an apartment." The woman offered the last argument she had. "You what? Where is the money from?" was surprised daughter. "Lenia said he would help," she parried. "Well, if he helps, then I agree finally. Her dream will come true, and she will live alone." As soon as the girl moved out, she began a completely different life. Now she could eat or not eat before her mother pointed it out, bring her friends to visit, and everything else. "Selena, you've blossomed," Mickey, who she had liked for a long time, told her. Like? She wanted him to go out with her or come and visit. Yeah, he didn't ask or say anything else. He just stood there silent. "Come and visit me," she plucked up the courage. "Why, and I will come," he revived. "So I'm waiting for you tonight," she blushed. At home, Selena cooked unpretentious dishes, expecting that the guy would come hungry, because students are all like that. And so he did. "Hi," he stood there glowing like a new dollar. "Come in," she greeted him cordially. The young people went to the kitchen. There the girl immediately began to put dishes on a plate. After that, they moved to the room. "Wow, you have parents? Cotta rented?" He looked around. "Yes, the mother did not want me to disturb her, did not want to talk about it, girl." "I see," he turned to her. "Why didn't you notice me before?" she asked him bluntly. "Did you see what you were wearing?" "I did, but in a different way," he laughed. "Fool," she turned away. "Do not be offended. I understand that you live with your mother. Most likely, it is her merit." He stopped laughing and put his hand on the back of the sofa so that a little touched the girl. "Okay, let's watch a movie. I made beer and chips." She got up, went to the fridge, and brought everything to the table. The evening was very heartwarming. Selena realized that she liked him for a reason. He was exactly what she needed in her life. The next day, Mickey was again at the girl's house. I missed him. She met him in a funny homemade suit. And me, he handed her a teddy bear. "Why did you spend the money? Already probably not enough." She hugged him. At that moment, the guy pulled her against him. She looked up, and at that moment, Mickey started kissing her. From that day on, the lovers never parted again. "Are you going to school?" she asked him. "No, I don't want to." He stretched his hands to her, and when they made contact, the girl found herself in bed with the guy. And they weren't going anywhere together today. "We can't do this. We're in our final year. We have to get our diplomas at any cost," Selena said. "Nothing is going to happen over one day." Mickey kissed her. It felt so good, so warm in his arms. She watched and couldn't believe they were really together. "Why don't we go visit your mom?" Mickey suggested it. "Are you ready to propose?" She was happy. "Why not?" "Not yet, though." He wasn't looking her in the eye. "What's the matter?" The girl didn't understand. "No, just," he spread his hands. Selena didn't want to take Mickey's mom to visit unannounced. She'd called, said they were coming over. Her mother had gotten excited. Then the girl let Mickey know about it. How exciting they were going. "I don't see what the big deal is," she shrugged. "Hello." They entered the house where the girl's mother lived. "Hurry, things would soon get cold." The mother was waiting for them. Richard was already sitting at the table. He was smiling. "Well, what, daughter, are you going to get married?" her mother asked her. "Wait, we haven't finished our studies yet." Selena made a serious face. "It's okay. You'll get your diplomas, get a job, and then you'll start renting an apartment yourself, and you'll get married," the woman reasoned. To be honest, Selena didn't expect anything else from her. She looked sadly at the woman who had loved her as a child, strictly brought her up in her youth. And now what? That Richard had come along and everything had gone to shit. "We should probably go." The girl stood up. She looked at Mickey. "Where to? We haven't tried anything yet." You could see that the guy was getting into the confidence of his future mother-in-law. "There, you see." The guy says smart things, got the mother on his side. Good. Sat back down Selena. After that, it was only Mickey who talked at the table. He talked about his academic success and everything else. In the evening, they finally left the apartment. Why did you want to go and visit them? Selena wondered. Just to get acquainted. It seemed like he was really telling the truth. Well, they came home. There was no mood to talk about anything. As time went on, school continued. Things with Mickey became monotonous. Before, they were always going out having fun, but now they were just sitting at home. Mickey, we used to have fun together at home, she told him. What's different now? He didn't understand. That was it. She couldn't help herself. That evening, the guy got up and left. Selena cried, tried to call him, but he didn't answer. What was going on in her life? Why was she like this? She'd gone from being a kind, helpful girl to some kind of freak. She thought it over, and the next day, while studying, Selena approached Mickey. I'm sorry, I snapped. It's all come up, Mom, the house parties. She stood in front of him guilty. Come here, I'm sorry too, he hugged her. From that moment on, they had a different relationship. By graduation, the guy proposed to Selena. He became something else altogether. He'd go out at night, come back late. Selena felt sorry for him, thought he was depressed. Congratulations, she kissed her husband-to-be, both holding diplomas. And he was happy. A very different happy life was beginning, Selena thought. But it turned out that this happiness was only her own idea. When are we going to apply? She asked Mickey. I don't know. You want to do it tomorrow, he shrugged. Selena looked at him. He was always sad. Nothing was working out for him, or he didn't want to do anything. She found a job quickly. The pay was good. The staff was normal. That's it. There is nowhere to pull. Let's go to the registry office. One evening, she said to him. Come on, he followed her like a dog. Mickey, I can't take it anymore. Tell me what's going on. She couldn't understand it. It's okay. That's all he answered her. I can see something's happened to you. Selena stopped in the middle of the street. She didn't go anywhere that day. Mashka, hi, can I come over? She called her friend. Of course, she agreed. That evening, Selena and Maria sat in her kitchen and drank wine. The girl told and told. She was crying. She couldn't stop. What are you so killed? Sit down and talk. The friend was incomprehensible. What is difficult about it? He doesn't talk to me, you know. Selena raised her tearful eyes. She got home late. Mickey was already asleep. The girl lay down next to her. Cats were scratching at her soul. That day started as usual, but how it would end, the girl could not even guess. Selena, we need to talk to you, Mickey told her at breakfast this morning. It's about time. She looked at him. I'm leaving, he said. What? She even got up from her chair. I have another. He lowered his eyes to the floor. Mickey, don't lie to me. Tell me what's wrong with our relationship. She couldn't believe it. The night you and I had our fight and I left, I met a girl at the bar. I don't know how it happened. We were drinking heavily. We went to her house. That's where it happened. After that, she started calling, I answered. He told it like he was being interrogated. So, if you don't want to, you don't have to be with her, do you? She couldn't understand what was happening. She was dizzy. She's having my baby, he said at the end. God, how could this happen? Selena cried. Mickey was packing his things, and Selena was getting ready for work. She was walking down the street, and she didn't realize how just like that, in an instant, her happy life had been blown to pieces. At the office, she went up to her floor. Her co-worker friends were there, all friendly. They were acting strangely that day. Selena, come in to see me, her boss called out to her. Yeah, she came to see her. You see, there is a redundancy and I have to fire you because you are new. You have just arrived, said the boss, and Selena's ears were ringing so loudly that she couldn't listen anymore. She gathered her things, which weren't much, and went home. It was cold outside, but she didn't feel it. When she approached her driveway, she saw a homeless woman lying in the snow. At first, the girl passed by. She didn't want to get involved, but when she entered the entrance, she stopped. And it's me, she said out loud. Today, I was thrown out on the street like that, first by a guy and then at work. She turned around, walked out of the entrance, and approached the poor guy. Can you stand up? She leaned over her. When the woman did not answer, she dragged her into the entranceway, which she managed with difficulty. The snow was easy, but then the hard part began. Selena was exhausted to the point of tears, but she did it. The woman was warm now. I hope you are doing well. She got up and walked. She heard the woman moan. Are you very sick? Said the girl and took a few more steps. Help, said the homeless woman to her. And where did all this come from today? She came back. Can you get up? Again she repeated her. She realized that she could not drag her to the floor. Give me your hand. Inga couldn't open her eyes. Everything was spinning in front of her. Get up. Selena grabbed the railing so she had a foothold and gave her other hand to the woman. She somehow got up. Selena, overcoming her disgust, led the tramp to her home. I'll do a good deed. Maybe karma will get better, she said aloud. At home, she put the old woman on a chair and brought her some water. When the woman took off her shoes, the landlady plugged her nose. God, when was the last time you bathed? She asked rhetorically. Is there anything hot to eat? The woman asked. Now come in. The girl even liked the whole situation. Now she would come home, would be alone, crying, suffering, remembering, and so, at least some company and no time to think. Inga took off her jacket, which had grown attached to her, and followed the girl. Here, the soup, yesterday cooked, she said, and then thought that she probably ate worse, smiled. Inga ate the soup as if she had never tasted anything better in her life. Take your things off, I'll throw them away and find you something else, Selena asked, because when they got into the warmth, they started to smell so fragrant it made her eyes water. Wow. She saw the scars on the tramp's body. You've been through a lot. Don't mind her. Inga was standing in front of her completely naked. Who did that to you? Selena got up, went to the room, brought a robe, but did not give it back, but made the old woman go to wash herself. Why did you let me in? Inga asked the girl. I could steal something from you. Take it. She waved her hands. No, I don't need anything. Thanks for everything. Can I have my jacket back? She got up from the chair. No, I will not let you go anywhere. The landlady realized that today in this woman she found salvation from her suffering. You have a husband, children. How will they understand all this? Asked Inga. I have no one. At this point, all the pain came to her throat, and she burst into tears. Don't. Inga wanted to approach her, but she understood that she could be unpleasant to this young person. It was all right, and she began to pour out what had happened to her. Everyone's life is hard, Inga said. Yes, I would never have thought that this could happen to me, the girl sobbed one last time. It seemed that all the resentment that was there came out with those tears. Maybe I should go after all, Inga asked. No, stay. Live a little. Tell me your story. It will be easier. At some point in her head, a stray thought flashed through her mind. What if she just lacks a caring mom who could listen to her in the kitchen and feel sorry for her? Thank you. You're a very kind person, the woman said. Selena made her a bed on the floor and lay down on the bed herself. They did not speak again that evening. Both were exhausted. They went to bed. In the morning, Selena didn't need to be anywhere else. She got up and smelled the smell from the kitchen. What are you doing here? She walked in and saw the cheesecakes on the table. She took one, and though it was very hot, she took a bite. Eat. Don't hurry, said the woman gently. Who brought you here? Laughed the girl. I don't know, and you to me? Inga sat down opposite her. We didn't even get acquainted with you yesterday, the landlady said. My name is Inga, said the woman. And I'm Selena. Tell me what happened to you, she asked. It's a very long story, sighed the guest. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm in no hurry, I think you are too, laughed Selena. Okay, nodded the one. It started a long time ago. How long? Selena began to speculate in her mind. If she looks like that, then how many years has she been suffering? Not as long as you might think. Inga smiled softly. Okay, I'm listening, nodded her interlocutor. About 30 years ago, gave out the woman and looked at the girl's reaction. What, you were young then? So you are not so many years old. Why then? She shut her mouth with her hand. I met my future husband, she began to tell and got to the point where he came back from prison. What, straight cut off? The girl looked with big eyes. I don't know, I didn't go into details. Only after that I had hell on earth. As soon as my husband and son did not mock me, she tilted her head. A stingy tear rolled from her eye. And how did you survive all this? The girl was silent. I don't know. I even tried to hang myself, but I didn't have the will, she said, asking him to let me go, but Jack kept me at home like a slave. And then it happened that my son attacked his wife. I interceded. He pushed me away, hit my head, ended up in the hospital. Terrible. Those were the only words Selena said. But for me, it was a step to salvation. When I woke up, I pretended like something was wrong and I didn't understand anything. I smiled all the time and did things I didn't understand. At home, they stopped taking me seriously, didn't pay attention to me, and I just needed it. She was getting angry with every word, so she was angry at the men in her family. I see, Spinall rubbed her hands. Yes, so they planned to get rid of me. They were discussing the plan. I wanted to come down at that moment. I heard it and froze. My ex-brother-in-law was going to poison me. I prepared myself. While he was in my room, I switched the capsule in his pocket for an ordinary sleeping pill. When I drank tea, of course, I fell down. They thought the deed was done. Inga stopped, drank tea, looked at Selena. And what next? She was already so engrossed that she was interested in everything else. I, of course, do not know it, but I can guess. I was taken to the forest. Imagine my own son. Okay, husband, but a bloodline. I do not understand. I woke up from the cold, heard footsteps, got scared, pretended to be unconscious again. A man came over. I was so afraid he would take me to the hospital. They would find out who I was and bring me back to that wretched house again, she sobbed. Yes, that's quite a story, Selena marveled. But he turned out to be a coward, scared of something, took me to the tramps that lived on the outskirts. And then I had to play amnesia. The people who brought the food were always asking around. What was their name? To help them find relatives, and I didn't want that. Let it be with vagrants, but I'm free. No one pokes me. No one commands me. She stopped again to drink tea. How did you end up here? It's far from the outskirts. Selena was already head over heels in that story. To be honest, it's not a good story. I don't want to tell it. I'm disgusted. You saw what I was like when I came here. She looked at her new acquaintance. Stay here. I won't tell anyone about you, said Celine. I need your help, Inga asked. Sure, whatever you want. The girl turned to listen. Need a good lawyer, I later, but I can pay. Waited for an answer after this question. I have one acquaintance. She remembered about Richard, Mom's boyfriend. He was just engaged in legal affairs. If you help me, you won't regret it, the woman said. All right, I'll try to talk him into it, the girl promised her. After that, everyone went about their business. Selena left the house after a couple of hours, and Inga just sat in an armchair and read a book. She thought everything over. The main thing was to get help, because Jack could do a lot. He agrees. Selena came home. What did you tell him? Inga wondered. Nothing of what you told me, just pressed on pity, admitted the girl. Well then, the war begins, clenched her fist, the one who had been bullied all her life. There was so much anger at the native people that even words cannot express. Richard, when he came to visit, he doubted for a long time that this client would be able to pay him, but he liked the story so much that he decided to take the case. You and I will file a statement, indicate there that they abused you, tried to kill you, and everything else, asked the man. Yes, that's right, she agreed with him. Do you have any witnesses to any of this? It was important. Yes, the ex-sister-in-law. The doctors can give extracts with all the references. Inga began to enumerate. Great, consider it a done deal, he snapped his fingers. The case had begun, but Jack and Arnold didn't know it yet. After they took the mother and wife out into the woods, they waited a few days to report them missing. When this happened, the son began to tell them that his mother, with her sick head, kept asking to be taken to one place or another. He was asked to show these places. First, they went to the market, then somewhere else, and the third object was the forest. But no matter how many times they looked, there was no body. Did the wolves eat her? Arnold wondered when he talked to his father. Nothing. Soon time will pass, they will consider her missing, and we will still get the inheritance, his father reassured him. Of course, without a death certificate, no one would give them anything. They lurked and waited for the time to pass when the woman would be reported missing. Why don't you find out anything? Arnold was nervous. Why should I go to the trouble? His father didn't understand. Their hands were tied now. They had to sit quietly to keep themselves uncovered. The doorbell rang. Jack got up and went to open it. On the threshold stood a solid man. "Hello, my name is Richard. I represent your wife, Inga." He said everything at once. "What wife? She disappeared a few months ago." The man stood looking at him. "I don't know. Here is her statement. She instructed me to sue you and to handle the case." The lawyer spoke politely. "I don't understand anything. Come in." You could see how the hands of the master of life trembled. "Here, you can familiarize yourself with everything here." He held out a folder with documents to Jack. Arnold was curious too, so he came over. "It's all the ravings of a madman," he said. "My wife has been having trouble with her head lately." "That's not true, and the doctors can confirm that she's fine." He pulled out a certificate. "What's going on here?" The man turned to his son. He only shrugged his shoulders in response. "Well, I've notified you. The lawsuit has been filed. Wait for the summons. I don't advise you to run away." Richard smiled before leaving. "And what? Tell me, what were their faces like?" Celine couldn't wait for the man. Though she disliked him, it didn't matter now. "What do you think?" He laughed. "Can you imagine? They are sitting waiting for the inheritance to pass into their hands. And then on top of that, the lawsuit," laughed the girl. "Stop it. He who laughs laughs well," said Inga. She sat and listened to Richard. She had the same joy in her soul, but she was not used to show it. "Great. I think we're in a winning position." The man said goodbye to them and drove home. "He's nice," Inga said. "And what he takes you all for," snorted the girl. They waited for the lawyer to call. The woman needed clothes to look decent at the trial. Selena decided to splurge. She trusted the lady. The hearing was scheduled in a month. When Jack saw Inga, his eyes almost popped out of his orbits. She wasn't as beautiful as she used to be, but she held herself with pride. "Mother, how can you slander your own son?" Arnold shouted at her. "And when you beat and humiliated her, did you think about it?" Selena put in her word. "Who are you? Who are you anyway? You've got your mom's money, so you made it all up." They shouted until they were stopped. Richard was the one who had it all in his hands. The men were sentenced to 12 and 13 years. They kept their heads down and sat like that for the rest of the trial. "I'll get out. I'll kill you." Jack turned to her and gestured it all away. "No way," Selena reassured Inga. Arnold was crying. He didn't want to go there at all. He was weak, especially, and his father wouldn't be around. "True to form," whispered his mother as he walked past her. "By the way, why didn't you mention Carlo, your son-in-law?" Selena asked her when they were already out. "He was a pawn like many in their game," the woman muttered. "What will you do now?" the girl asked. "Invite you to visit me." Inga was happy. They had come to this big house that she had dreamed of so much when she was young. Now she hated the place. "Wow," Selena walked around admiring it. "Baby, don't you think you're getting fat? Or is it something else?" the woman asked her. The girl stopped, she thought, counting to herself. It can't be. She looked at the woman as if the woman had told her some universal secret. "We should get it checked out," Inga advised her doctor. As Selena left, she would be gone for hours. The woman sat down at the phone. "Julia, hi," she dialed her daughter's number. "Mommy, you can't imagine how much I've missed you," she cried into the phone. "Come home, now everything is calm here," said and smiled the mistress of a huge fortune. "With pleasure, but I'm not alone." She stopped talking. "Okay, I'll accept anyone," laughed Mom. After that, she did not calm down and called Diana. "You?" She couldn't believe her ears. "Can you come over?" her ex-mother-in-law asked her. "I'm not going to your house anymore." The girl began to refuse. "Come now, it's my house," reassured her Inga. "If so, then wait," promised Diana. Selena returned happy. "Even if it's just a small piece of Pasha's life," she said to her new good friend. "Will you stay?" the woman asked her. "What are you suggesting?" The girl couldn't believe it. "Soon all my dear people will gather. You will give birth. A grandchild will appear." She touched her stomach. "I had to pick up a homeless woman in my yard." Selena couldn't believe it. "What's the big deal? Kindness is always reciprocated with kindness." Inga hugged her. They began to clean the huge house, which had not been cleaned for many years. A lot of things had been thrown out, rearranged. "And let's make separate rooms for everyone," the landlady suggested. "What do you mean?" The girl didn't understand her. A nursery for the baby, a bedroom for my daughter with a young man, a boudoir for my former daughter-in-law, and for you too. Inga was glad that now she could do everything here as she wanted. I don't believe in all this at all, was still fascinated by Selena. Richard and his wife were also invited to celebrate the housewarming. Julia came with her fiancé. The latter took along a friend who had dreamed of seeing Russia all his life. Diana was also here when Inga told her everything. She couldn't believe it, that it was true. "Selena, can I talk to you?" Michael said in very bad Russian. "Yes, what did you want?" She turned and walked over to him. "Why you?" He corrected her. "Okay," she blushed. "You are very beautiful," he complimented her and led her into the garden. "Are you asking to stay here in our country?" She was joking. "What?" He didn't understand her. "No reason. I'm joking," laughing, she smiled. "You'll make a good couple," she approved of Michael's choice. "Well, how are the rooms?" Selena couldn't wait to find out, because she'd done everything with her own hands. "Great, especially mine," Diana smiled. "Here's what I want to tell you, friends," stood up from the seat Inga. "All invited here can stay here to live. I will not interfere." "It's embarrassing," said Diana. "It's okay. You've suffered so much for my son. You need to live like in paradise," said her former mother-in-law. "What about you?" Richard asked Selena. "While Michael is here, I'll stay, and then we'll see." They held hands. "Look how two people could make so many people happy. They should have just disappeared," the woman laughed. They sat back down at the table and talked and laughed for a long time more. Selena stayed to live with Inga. Things worked out well for them with Michael. When he found out that the girl was pregnant, at first he was frightened. How could it be possible? Because they only kissed. In fact, he was so funny. For a while, they went to this place to make the documents and then came back. "Here we go," Selena screamed in the middle of the night. A car arrived quickly and the girl was taken to the maternity hospital. A large number of people waited outside the hospital to see how it would go. "I never thought that my daughter would have such a big family," her mother said. She finally realized that she had behaved wrongly. "Look," Richard pointed at the girl in the white coat who was coming toward them. "What? Who?" The customers started clamoring. "I congratulate you. You have a grandson, a son, a nephew." She moved her gaze from one person to another. "Thank you, Selena. Congratulations." They all started shouting together. "Now you better go home and tomorrow morning come back. The young mother needs to rest," the nurse advised them. "Okay, see you tomorrow." Everyone went to Inga's house. It didn't matter that it was night. Now this group was so united, stronger than some family ties. "My dears, I invite you to the table." They entered the hall of the big house. Julia was born when her mother was 33 years old. It was a long-awaited child, whom everyone loved from the moment of conception. "Barry, I'm pregnant," Selena told her husband. "Well, finally," he hugged her. From that moment, when everyone found out that a daughter and granddaughter would soon be born, Selena began to be watched and cared for very closely. Up to that point, Barry and Selena had tried many times to have a child, but nothing had worked out. Not that there had been miscarriages or anything, but not even a pregnancy. "How are you feeling?" Grandma asked Selena all the time. "Fine," she answered. "Nothing's bothering you?" The old lady was worried that something might happen. "No, if something happens, I'll be sure to tell," Selena assured everyone. Almost the whole pregnancy the girl went well. Nothing bothered her. Her stomach did not hurt. Everyone helped her as much as they could. A couple of times at the end of the term she had high blood pressure, so she had to go to the hospital. Otherwise, everything went well. "Oh, I heard Barry in the night." "Darling, what's wrong?" "I heard my husband moaning." "I think I've got it all started." She held her stomach. For this occasion they had everything ready. The bags were packed. The car was standing near the entrance. All that was left was to pack everything, get in, and drive to the hospital, which they did. "That's it. Come on, love." He left her alone. "That's it. I'll call you." She kissed him and went into the maternity ward. If the beginning was rapid, then everything calmed down. "I'm in pain," cried Selena. "Nothing, Barrett." "Barrett," soothed her midwife. But the girl could not tolerate. She asked to be put anesthetized or something else, just to relieve this terrible pain. Everything started very long. The pain was so stretched out that Selena thought she would just die here on this labor chair. But when the baby's head came through, her whole body just slipped out of her. And immediately there was a relief that could not even be expressed in words. Selena looked at her baby and couldn't believe she'd done it. "Julia," she stroked her head. "Congratulations, Mommy," the doctor told her. "Thank you," exhaled Selena. In a few hours, she was already in the room. They brought her daughter to be fed. It was all so unusual and unfamiliar. The girl was born at 4 in the morning. At this time, Selena did not call her husband because she did not want to wake him up and disturb him. But when the morning came, she didn't spare him. "Barry, you become the father of a beautiful baby girl," she said into the phone. "Darling, thank you for your daughter," he told her. And by lunchtime, the young husband was at the hospital window. He was smiling, looking at his daughter. And then, during the day, all the other relatives began to pull up: mother, grandmother, mother-in-law. All of them wished only health to this new person who was born. "When will you be discharged?" her mother asked her. "They promised the 3rd day," Selena said. "I see what you mean. They wanted to go to their apartment to clean it." On the 3rd day, indeed, Selena and her daughter were discharged. Around the maternity hospital met all the same relatives. After that, they decided not to bother the young mother, to let her settle in a little. "And I'll probably go with you," the grandmother said. Okay, Selena was fine with everyone else going too. Yes, she had a baby, but in the hospital she complained that she was 30 years old, but it was her first child, and she didn't know what to do with it. They helped her give birth, and then just threw the baby away, and that was it. She's already resented it. So now she's decided she's going to do it herself. "Barry, please put the kettle on and make some unsweetened porridge," she asked her husband. "Now give me 1 minute," the young man told her, then went to the kitchen, rattled the dishes, and then returned with a plate of freshly made porridge. "Here, thank you," thanked his wife. "Aren't you tired?" he asked her. "Not too tired," she admitted frankly. Selena really was not very tired because there were so many helpers around. "Well, my favorite daughter," Selena liked to talk to her when no one was home. "Do you want me to read you a book?" After these words, she would take in her hands fairy tales. While her mother read to her daughter, she would lie there and look at her. It was immediately clear that this was a curious child. All the relatives came daily to Selena because it was the only child in their family. "Aren't you tired?" Barry often asked her in the evenings. After bathing and putting the child to bed, "It is a pleasant fatigue," his wife answered him. "I'm glad for that you don't complain like so many other mamas." Her husband kissed her. It was always like that. The older Julia got, the more curious she became. "Where did this come from? What is this?" she asked her grandmother when she visited her. "Here, look," she told everything calmly. She had nowhere to hurry. Interestingly, the girl liked to climb through her grandmother's closets. In them stood different boxes, and in them were jewelry, brooches, beads, earrings, rings. All this girl poured out on the floor. She liked to dress up. In general, Julia spent a lot of time with her grandmother. Selena went to work. The girl had to leave her with someone, so the grandmother agreed because she did not want to give her to the early kindergarten. "Thank you, Mom. Selena came by tonight." "It's my pleasure," she hugged her daughter. Grandma taught the little girl a lot of things. They cooked dumplings together, chopped cabbage, cooked cold soup. Julia was interested in everything. "Why is this picture hanging here?" Granddaughter asked her grandmother. "It's a picture from a fairy tale," the woman began to tell. "Which one?" Sat down and prepared to listen to her granddaughter. "And why is it here?" the insistent girl asked. "For beauty. Isn't it beautiful?" The woman was surprised. "Beautiful," agreed her granddaughter. "So let it hang." The grandmother always diverted this conversation. Selena tried to spend a lot of time with her daughter. She and Barry went to the movies every weekend, not forgetting to take the little girl with them. They spent a lot of time together as a family. "Would you come this weekend?" Barry's mother asked them. Of course, they were used to getting together like this. Her husband's father had passed away a long time ago, and Selena didn't have a father either, so they didn't leave their mothers behind. "Why don't I have grandfathers?" Julia often asked. "They happen to be in heaven," Grandma said sadly. "It's a pity. We would go for walks with them." Julia was a little girl. but very sensible. Often staying with her grandmother, they learned poems, so the little girl's memory was perfectly developed. Already in a year, at New Year's matinees, she could tell long poems. Everything was good, little girl. Sit, do not sit at home, but in the garden, to go to the garden must go. As then on the weekend came Selena home to his mother. It is a pity to give such a little girl, although Julia was already 3 years old. For relatives, she will always remain a little girl. It's okay, let her go. There are guys there socializing, Selena said. She understood that her mother could sit with her for as long as she wanted, but she had to enter society. Yeah, I agree, Olivia sighed. And so the day came when Julia had to go to kindergarten. The first day was difficult. The girl came to kindergarten normally. She did not cry, did not ask to go home. But when we went for a walk to the plot, she took the big stick and just went home. We lived close by. Barry was getting ready for work. He was shaving in the hallway when he heard a knock on the door. Where are you coming from? He looked at his daughter with frightened eyes. I'm going home, Julia said in a businesslike manner. No, Terry, that won't do. He gathered himself and took the child back to the daycare center. Oh, thank you for not panicking. The teacher thanked him. No way, I know my daughter, he smiled. I can't figure out who's missing, she said to Barry. That's it, watch the kids. I got to run, he said, and then he left. After that, there were no more incidents at the daycare center. Julia was on her best behavior. Well, how is my daughter here? Asked the mother from the teacher. All is well, but just does not give children to learn poetry, complained the woman. What do you mean? Selena didn't understand. I put notes in the lockers in the evening, and she takes them out of there, learns everything, and then, as the smartest at the party alone tells everything, said the teacher. It's so clear she can read, so she can't learn. Her grandmother taught her to read a long time ago. That's what I'm talking about. The kindergarten worker shook her head. Let's hope that this is a transitional period, and soon everything will get better, hoped the mother. Indeed, the further Julia went to the daycare center, the better things got. The girl spent more and more time at her grandmother's house. Together they went to the garden, made beds there, planted them. When there were the first sprouts, they thinned them out, then weeded them. And at the end of the summer, when the whole harvest was gathered, it was collected in bags and lowered into the pit. Fa, exhausted, imitated a little girl grandmother. The surrounding only laughed at her. Oh, so young and already so tired, clapped on the sides of the grandmother. They spent time together very often. While her mother was pursuing her career, Julia was with her grandmother all the time. We should go to my homeland, Olivia once said. How? Her granddaughter asked. She had told her many times, but Julia had never been there. Would you take me with you? The girl looked with such eyes that it was hard to refuse. At the weekend, they went to the bus station, took a bus there, and went to the place where the woman was born. And who lives there now? All the way the granddaughter asked questions. No one, just a house left, sighed Olivia. Why did it stay there? The granddaughter wondered. It's just that everyone has gone to town, so it's just sitting there, the grandmother tried to explain. And what will we do there? Asked the next question the girl. Nothing. We'll warm the house, see what's in the vegetable garden, go to the bathhouse, and in the evening we'll go back. Olivia told her the plan for the day. Yes, a lot to do, shook her head like an adult Julia. A lot, sighed Grandma. They would arrive, do all the things the woman had talked about before. After that, they washed in the bathhouse, and then drank delicious tea with honey. Well, back? Asked the grandmother. Ah, shouted the girl. And again they were shaking in the bus. It was time to graduate from kindergarten, and again all the relatives were here, next to the girl. Mom, Dad, grandmothers congratulated her on the first completed step in her life, or rather the past step. School was ahead, but Julia was not afraid of it. She was waiting for her to come to the classroom and sit at the desk. Are you ready? Mom and Dad were standing in the hallway. The grandmothers were coming to the line. Yes, she nodded her head. Good riddance then, her father pushed her toward the door. They arrived in the schoolyard and the grandmothers were already there. Everyone was in a good mood, congratulating their child for going to school for the first time. I promise you that I will study well, the girl said to her relatives. And we'll help you, they said. Well, I think you and I will often have to do our lessons together. Olivia was sure of it. She loved her grandmother, and she loved her grandmother back. The first bell rang and the children went to their class. Dear first graders, the teacher said the first word to them, I wish you a bright road. After the class hour was over, the boys poured out into the schoolyard. Today it was already possible to go home. To me, the grandmother looked at her granddaughter because she knew that her parents had to go to work. Yes, Julia loved to spend time with her most favorite person, so she always enjoyed going to visit her. Her grandmother told her granddaughter often the same story, how she was little, how she came into the world, what she did. Olivia was born in the distant 1933. She lived happily with her parents. Nothing said that there would be something terrible. But the war began. The parents went to the front, and the girl was sent to an orphanage because she was very small. But when she was 7 years old, there was a fire in the institution. Everything burned, including all the personal files and documents. They made new documents for the children, where their age was put on their site. That's when I was 5 years older, because I was tall and strong, Olivia said. And then there was a war, her granddaughter asked her. Yes, but it did not come to our town. We were only evacuated, continued to tell her grandmother. And what happened next was interesting to the girl. She studied in the 5th grade. They began to pass the theme of the Great Patriotic War. To us in the city, evacuated a whole factory. It used to be on the territory of Ukraine, and in September it was brought to us, Olivia recalled. Wow, and how it was rebuilt again, asked the girl. I can't tell you that, because I don't know, but it was built very quickly, that's for sure. And after that, both old and young went to work there. Grandmother immersed herself so much in memories that it seemed she was not here at all. And you worked there too? The girl was amazed. Of course, together with my mother, we, when it was possible, went home. But mostly, we were always at the production. They worked in several shifts then. So many people just spent the day and night there. Many people had no shoes. It was impossible to walk. There were iron shavings on the floor. You had to protect your feet somehow. And if you walked in the same shoes, both on the street and indoors, you wouldn't have enough felt boots, my grandmother recalled. Wow, you were a child. Sat and looked out the window of Julia. Grandmother never said anything like that, and Mom too. That's nothing. We kids who worked there, sometimes we couldn't even reach the machine, but we had to. We put the crates, and so we stood there all day long, cried the woman. Apparently she remembered something. Tell me something else, my granddaughter asked. What to tell? Times were hard. There was nothing to eat, nothing to wear. We struggled as we could, wiped her tears grandmother. Don't be so upset. It was all a long time ago. Julia pitied her. Okay, baby girl, hugged her grandmother. There was a very close bond between them. They sat on the bed, hugging, Olivia still sobbing, remembering how and what she'd had as a child. This story made Julia's mind reel, and she decided to write a report on it because it involved her grandmother. What are you thinking about? Her grandmother leaned over her. Nothing. I want to write a story about you and tell it to my classmates in class, disclosed her granddaughter. Okay, Olivia agreed. They took out the pictures, which for some reason had been in the grandmother's reticule, and began to look at them. Where are all these people? Asked her granddaughter. Who is where? The grandmother was evading the answer. How I would like to have a big family, said the girl. And you have a small one? The woman was surprised and laughed. Not as big as I would like, not even a grandfather. She curved her lips as if she wanted to start crying. It's all right, yes, that's how it happened in our lives, shook her head grandmother. And where did he die in the war? Asked the girl. I don't want to talk about that. Olivia turned away from her. Well, and then someday will you tell me? Looked her granddaughter in the eyes. Maybe, the woman promised and changed the subject. No, I don't want to talk about it. The grandmother started talking about school and what happens in it. Why, I need to know about your business, Olivia wondered. I want to know about your childhood, how your mother was born. I'm interested in all that, Julia insisted. Well, maybe someday I'll tell you all about it, or maybe your mother will tell you, she said. Okay, you think I'm still young, don't you? Guessed the girl. Everything is possible, and now let's go to the kitchen. I'll show you how to start the dough for pancakes. Grandma taught her granddaughter different wisdom, which will be useful later in ordinary life. Julia already knew how to take a hook, needles, to make any kind of dough, cooking, and all this at the age of 10. No, I cannot do it. Could not stir the girl flour into the liquid so that there were no lumps. Nothing. Washington was not built at once, Grandma said calmly. They made the dough, made pancakes, then Grandma made morsels, and they were full. Well, shall we go and lie down for a while? The old lady asked her. Okay. They went to the room that used to be Mom's room. There was a TV set in it, but it didn't work well, and the same picture hung on the wall. Can you tell me the story? Grandma asked her granddaughter. This picture has haunted me since childhood, smiled the girl. Julia was still chattering when she heard her grandmother already sniffling. She covered her eyelids too, deciding to take a little nap. That's how they slept, cuddled together. Grandma was the first to wake up, realizing that they had been asleep for more than 3 hours. No wonder, first so much to cut, then not so much to sleep, she said to herself. Baba Olivia, Julia called out to her when she woke up. What's up, my dear? She peeked into the room. You know, I was just thinking, that's where my daddy works, she said. Yes, so he is the only one in town, stroked her on the head grandmother. So it has been functioning in our town for many years. It was such an interesting topic that the girl decided to ask her parents about it at home. Julia was so impressed with the different stories today that she wanted to learn more and more. She herself started reading about the local city forming enterprise, what it does, why it was evacuated here, who works here, and other things. Everything was interesting. Daddy, it turns out that you work at such an enterprise, which helped people in wartime. She came home in the evening happy. Yes, did you know that? He was surprised. No, only today my grandmother told me, my daughter told him. Wow. And you were not taken on an excursion? He asked. They did, but they didn't tell me about it. Apparently they thought it was too early, she concluded. The girl was growing up. She remained very curious. She was interested in everything, especially in what was connected with the war. When she was in the 8th grade, she already knew a lot about the local factory. She wrote more than one report on the subject, and the information still did not end. Grandma, tell me something more about our plant, she often asked her. What to tell? I have already told you everything. The woman did not understand. Well, I don't even know. Julia herself did not understand why she had developed such an interest in this institution. The girl had been collecting materials, sitting in the plant's library for a long time. Julia already knew almost by sight all those who in different years led this enterprise. If she had been woken up at night and asked in what year the plant was evacuated and started working, she would have told it with her eyes closed. Couldn't any of our relatives have worked there? She asked her grandmother once. Why such questions? She didn't understand. It's just that so many people work there and no one is our relative, she asked. I don't know. The woman shrugged her shoulders. I see, we will find out further. Julia did not want to give up. In her head has long settled the idea to find at least some of their relatives. It can't be that everyone came from somewhere and there are no relatives. Julia had long watched the program Looking for You. She dreamed that when she grew up, she would write a letter there and look for her grandfather or his children. She even told her grandmother about it, but she just waved her hand. You'll only waste your time, she said then. And what if I find someone? Argued her granddaughter. Let's make a deal. You'll do it after I'm gone. Grandma Olivia asked her. Let's see, the girl thought to herself, that grandma might live for many more years. This was a topic they had brought up and mused about more than once. The girl also learned that during the evacuation of the plant, together with him came several specialists from abroad, and further did not stop coming. It was very interesting, so Julia did not leave this topic. Grandma, why did you give birth to only one daughter? One day her granddaughter asked her. It just so happened she couldn't find anything to answer. Now I would have aunts and uncles, and so no one. Daddy is also a grandma. One was sad girl. Why are you so caught up in these relatives? Olivia did not understand. I don't know, it's a big city, the factory too. During the war, whoever came here, and there are no relatives. She was saddened. Well, no and no, you will get more, pressed her lips grandmother, because now there is nothing to change. That's right, the girl was all grown up. Olivia was glad she'd lived to be at least that age. It's not scary to leave now, she often said. What are you starting again? She and Julia were at the cottage. The girl had just gone on vacation. She had finished ninth grade. I should have taken my father with me. He would have attached the hoses to the pipes. They were supposed to turn on the irrigation today, and everything was broken. So let's ask him in the evening. He will come and do everything, suggested her granddaughter. Okay, agreed with her grandmother. They spent the whole day digging, making, and shaping beds. After that, they planted beets and carrots, as well as onions. After tired, they got ready to go home. They went to the bus stop, got on the bus, drove home. Julia went to her parents to tell her father about the pipes, and Olivia went home. Father, Granny, and I need help. The girl came home. Speak up. Barry listened to her. Tonight there will be watering and we have all the hoses broken, complained the daughter. Don't worry, I'll get it done. He got dressed and went to the store to buy clamps and hoses. Everything was purchased and the man went to the garden. The job took only a few minutes. In an hour, Barry was back in town. The hoses were ready. Julia was supposed to be at her grandmother's house by 7 o'clock, and they would go to the garden again. But her girlfriends came for her. Are you coming with us? They were waiting for her answer. That's right, I had completely forgotten. She remembered that she had promised the girl's friends to go for a walk with them today. Come on, Grandma can handle it all by herself, the friends urged. Yes, moreover, my father did everything. She nodded her head that there was nothing complicated there. Well, let's go for a walk, because with these vegetable gardens she forgot all about us, her friends asked her. All right, agreed Julia. She went into the apartment, changed her clothes, and went out to her friends. This evening they had to go to the disco. The girl thought she was letting her grandmother down, but she also wanted to spend time with the girls, so she decided not to think about it. In the evening she still went to the disco, and it was very late when she came home. She opened the door with her keys, entered the apartment. It was silent. She thought her parents were asleep. She tiptoed in, but there was no one in the room. I don't get it. Where's everyone? Julia turned on the light. She went to the other room, but there was no one there either. The girl went out on the balcony. The apartment was on the top floor. Opposite was visible the house of grandmother. In her windows was burning light. What? Did not understand the girl. She knew for sure that the grandmother at this time is always asleep. Julia gathered herself again and went to her grandmother's house. Luckily, she lived only a block away. The girl was shaking and couldn't stop shaking. By the time she got to Olivia's house, her whole body was shaking. She entered the entryway, went up to the floor, opened the doors. Everyone was here. The ambulance, the neighbors, the other grandmother. Mom, what's wrong with Grandma? Julia asked. She's not well, Selena said in a dead voice. And what happened? Granddaughter did not understand. Just a few hours ago, they were digging beds with her, and now she is sick. I don't know, something with her heart, so I called an ambulance. The woman was on the verge of hysterics. Olivia was hospitalized. They took her away in an ambulance. Now the grandmother was in the hospital. Selena and her daughter visited her grandmother every day. They didn't want anything terrible to happen, but they couldn't prevent it. What they feared most of all happened. How could it be? Everyone was crying around the woman's coffin. Barry, what happened? His wife asked him. I arrived that day. I did as I was asked. And then when Olivia arrived, she said there was nothing, he said. How could that have happened? Selena looked at her husband incredulously. I don't know. I didn't believe her. I decided to check it myself. And I went there again to the garden. When I was there, I saw that there was really nothing, he said. But you did? The wife clarified. Of course. Why should I deceive? I looked. There was all cut off. It was obvious that the man considers himself guilty of what happened. Calm down, Selena hugged him. There were a lot of people at the funeral, all condoling with the relatives. Selena and Julia were inconsolable. Grandma, cried her granddaughter. She didn't understand how she was going to live without her now. After the funeral, everyone went to the dining room and then home. We have to learn to live without Grandma, Selena said. I understand, the girl nodded. They had to finish 2 more grades of school before they could go anywhere. Now the topic of war was especially relevant. At school, they often asked to write essays on these topics, and always Julia wrote about her grandmother. She raised the topic of the factory, which she had long studied. It turned out that there was still a lot of interesting things. The girl wrote about it, the workers who stood at the origins and other things. Mom, and you have not tried to find your father? Once asked her daughter from Selena. Oh, and why should I? If he for all these years did not want to communicate with me, then I have no reason to look for him, said the one. And I wonder who my grandfather was. This question has long tormented the girl. If you want, you can look for him, said the woman. Okay, Julia collected all the documents of her mother. She knew little about her father. You don't even have to ask about the last name, the mother warned her right away. Then how will I find him? Julia didn't understand. I don't know, her mother shrugged. Well, let's wait a little longer. Maybe he had other children. Maybe they will find us, the girl concluded. The 11th grade was coming to an end. It was necessary to pass final exams and to enter somewhere. Julia was not worried. She chose history because she studied in a humanitarian class. She knew that, even if she didn't learn the ticket, she had a lot of things to say in her head. Are you ready for the exams? Her mom asked her. Yes, of course, her daughter never let her down. She always studied well. She came to the exams. She got a ticket about the war, specifically about the blockade. It's a very sad topic. While Julia was talking, she saw tears in the eyes of the commission members. Well, Mom greeted her daughter. 5. What else could it be? Smiled in response. Then there was literature, which the girl also passed on excellent, well, and written subjects. Will you come to my graduation? Julia asked her mother. I do not even know if they will let her go from work, the woman said, but she really wanted to get there. And so this solemn day came. Julia in a beautiful dress, with a hairstyle, went to school with a bouquet of flowers. Selena promised to come later. The girls were all handsome, the guys in strict suits. And where are you going now? They asked each other about enrollment. I'm in the neighboring city in the pedagogical college, Julia said. Clearly, no one else from you and did not expect, laughed girlfriends. I think it is just in my interests, said the girl. When they announced the beginning of the ceremony, Julia saw her mother enter the hall. She walked over to the other parents and sat down on a chair. I congratulate our graduates of today, the headmistress spoke. After her, the teachers came out, and then the parents. Everyone received their diploma and everyone went to their classrooms where the students congratulated their class teachers. And then there was an informal part in the canteen. Parents did their best for the children. They set the tables, even had champagne. After that, pupils and parents went away. According to the custom, yesterday's school children went to meet the dawn, and the older ones stayed at school. Some went home, but no one was offended. Well, it's time to go to school, Julia's mom said on her day off. Good, that one was ready for it. They got on the bus and drove to the next town. There were no problems with the enrollment. They just had to go to the institute a few times. And then there were exams. Everything went easily. The girl didn't even realize how it went. Congratulations, you are now applicants, said the woman who announced the results of enrollment. Now go home, Selena told her daughter. Good, she agreed. Now she had to decide where she would live, in a dormitory or rent an apartment. Where would you like to live? Her mom asked her. In an apartment, of course, her daughter told her. Well, all students live in a dormitory. If you don't live there, you won't feel like a student, Selena said. Okay, I'll first move into the dorm and then we'll see, agreed the girl. Hearing agreed, the mother realized that the apartment she would not be able to pull, even if her husband adds. All summer, Julia spent at home. She walked with friends, went to discos, had a blast. At the end of August, she went to check into the dormitory. Hi, when she entered the room, there were already 2 girls there. Hello, they greeted her. My name is Julia. The girl introduced herself from the doorstep. I'm Kira and this is Nellie. The girls had already gotten to know each other. Nice to meet you, she set her bag on the bed. I wonder who else will visit us. One bed was empty. The girls were sorting out their things. No one had stopped by today. In the evening, they all cooked together in the kitchen and got to know the other tenants. The next day, they went to the institute together. It was interesting and fun. The whole day, they were familiarized with the subjects, with the teachers. And then the real study began. So how did you like it at the institute? Julia asked me in the evening. Nothing so normally, Kira shrugged her shoulders. Interesting, at least for now, Nellie said. They continued to live, be friends, and study together. Julia could go home every weekend because her town wasn't very far away, but she didn't want to because they also had school on Saturday, and that wasn't very convenient. "You're not going again?" her friends asked. "No, it is better to go for a walk with you," said the girl. "Okay," but there was no time to go for a walk, they told her. The girls spent a lot of time studying. They tried to work for credit in the first 6 months. The first 6 months you work for the credit. The rest of the time the credit works for you, her mother often told her. This meant that you had to do everything first to get good grades and favor with the teachers. And already in the next sessions, the examiners will look in the credit card. They do not want to spoil the good marks and put automatic. But all the same, there was time for walks. They were young, so they had time for a lot of things. The first year was over very quickly. Julia was going home for summer vacation. They said goodbye to the girls. Julia invited them to visit her, but they realized that they would meet in 2 months, so they didn't regret the parting. And really, those couple of months flew by very quickly, and now it's August again, and they're back in their room. Hey, it's like they broke up yesterday. They all met up together. And don't tell me they hugged. Now they already had a cohesive team. They could go out on the first day. "So who had a good summer?" Julia asked. "In my field," said Nellie. "I was herding cows and harvesting hay." "Wow, I've never done that before." Julia was surprised. "I see you're a city girl," said her friend. "And you?" they asked Kira. "And I'm no way, almost all the time sat at home." She did not know what to say. "All is clear with you," waved at her girlfriends. They started to live again like last year. Studying, preparing, socializing, everything was fine. "Listen, let's have a party in the dormitory sometime," Kira suggested. "Why, we can't, we all know each other. Why not celebrate?" agreed girlfriends. Now it remained to choose a holiday, and the day when they would celebrate it. Certainly not New Year's Eve. At that moment, everyone goes home. Nellie began to list. "Let's have a Student's Day." Julia suggested it. "Indeed, it happens in the middle of the week," the others agreed with her. After that, they gathered people on their floor and told them the idea. No one refused. "That's great." All the students were happy. That was the end of it, and study continued. "What are you going to do after graduation?" One evening, Kira and Julia were talking. "Oh, what questions you have. You still have to finish it," she laughed. "Do you doubt that?" She raised an eyebrow. "No, but it's a long time away," Julia said. "Yeah, look how fast a year and a half has flown by. It'll be the same amount of time, and then it'll be the GCSEs. Kira was sure of it. "I don't know, I'll work. I'll go to school." She didn't doubt it, if nothing changes. "But I don't want to go to school," she said dreamily. "Where to?" Julia wondered. "I don't know. I could go to a museum." Kira shrugged her shoulders. "I didn't think about it." She stared at one point. "And I recently learned that there was such an education they also take," the girl specifically found out. "I see." Julia was thinking about something. "What are you thinking about?" "I was wondering about her friend." "Yes, about relatives," the girl admitted. "And what do you think about them?" Kira asked. "Nothing. I don't have them," Julia said sadly. "What do you mean?" "I don't understand." And just like that, for a long time I wanted to write to the program where people are looking for people, but I don't know anything. She was almost crying. "Why are you so upset? Everything will be fine. Your relatives will be found." Kara tried to calm her down. "Okay, I'm sorry," wiped her friend's tears. They hugged each other and sat like that for a long time. It was New Year's Eve and everyone went home. And when they arrived, the students began to prepare for the holiday, which they had agreed to celebrate. "Some strange guys are coming today," Nellie said. "Well, we'll get acquainted," laughed Julia. "I'm afraid there won't be enough for all of them," her friend also laughed. When January 25th came, everything was ready in the dormitory. The girls made sandwiches, the boys bought wine. They all set the table together. The unfamiliar boys really came. He sat down at the table across from Julia. The girl kept her eyes on him. "Hi," he got out of the table and walked over to her. "Hello," she held out her hand. "Let's go talk," he beckoned her over. "Okay," she looked at her friend and left the table. They stepped back to the window. "Anthony," he introduced himself. "Julia," she answered him. "Are you a student at this institute?" he asked. Yes, in my second year, she nodded. And I'm in my fourth, he smiled. Are you renting an apartment? She guessed, because she had never seen him in a dormitory. Yeah, he nodded. Is it expensive? She wondered. It's fine, I make my own money, the guy shared with the girl. Julia looked at Anthony. She liked this guy. And who are you by nationality? He asked her. Why do you ask that? She was surprised. Well, it's just that you have such a weird eye cut and black hair, he told her. I'm American, she replied. Come on, don't mind me. I was just asking. Anthony smirked. Let's go back to the table, Julia called out to him. They went back to the table, now sitting side by side. Anthony had been joking all evening, she laughed. He was fun to be with. So, how do you like the new guy? Her girlfriend asked her when they came into the room in the evening. Wow, I like him, she admitted to her honestly. So, are you going to be friends? Kira wondered. I don't know. He didn't offer anything. He didn't even set a meeting. They turned off the light in the room. Julia lay on her back and thought about Seriosa. She really liked this guy, but she didn't want to approach him first. The next day when they came to study at the first break, they met him. Hi, and I'm waiting for you here, he said. Hi, she blushed. She was pleased, but at the same time she was shy. Let's go for a walk tonight, he offered her. I don't know, it's cold outside, she told him. And whoever stopped that? Let's go to a cafe, he invited her. Okay, where shall we meet? She heard the bell ring. Why don't I pick you up at the dorm tonight? He told her. I'll be waiting. She looked at him and ran to the auditorium. What did he say to you? Kira whispered to her when class started. He said he'd come by the dorm tonight to pick me up, Julia told her quietly. Well, wow, we had a celebration. Kira laughed so that the teacher paid attention to her. Julia spent the rest of the school day thinking about Anthony. She didn't know what to wear on this date, since it was her first. On the one hand, it was cold outside, and she needed to wear something warm, but on the other hand, if they went to the cafe, she wouldn't freeze. When they got back to the dormitory, she already assumed what she would wear. The girl decided not to show off too much on the first day and put on jeans, a sweater, and a down jacket on top. Anthony picked her up at 7 in the evening, and they actually went to a nearby cafe. I don't know what got me so hooked on you, but I've been thinking about you all night, the guy told her. You have no idea, it was the same with me too, she blushed again. They ordered, nothing fancy, a bag of pistachios and a glass of beer each. So tell me a little about yourself, who you are, where you come from, what you're studying for, and what you think about your future. I'm an ordinary girl. I came from a neighboring town. Since I studied in the humanities class, I decided to enter the pedagogical school. I used to think that I would be a teacher, but recently a friend told me that with this education you can go to the museum. She began to tell me. I'm also an ordinary guy, studying at the 4th year, as you already know, soon to finish. But I do not want to work in the profession. He was extremely honest with her. And why? She was surprised. Why waste 5 years if you don't want to work in this profession? I don't know, I realized too late, but I need to get an education, he told her openly. Everything is clear with you, she laughed. They were still sitting and talking, the young man as yesterday, joked without ceasing. The girl liked it, she laughed. She was easy with this young man. That evening Anthony saw Julia off. They agreed that they would meet tomorrow. The next day was a day off. They didn't have to go to school, so they could walk around all day. So how was your walk? Her friend asked her when she came into the room. Everything is great. We agreed to meet tomorrow, Julia answered. I see you two are getting serious, Kira said. Nellie listened with interest. For some reason, she was not privy to these topics. Julia and Anthony really started to meet. They couldn't live a day without each other. Now often the girl stayed overnight at the young man's house and went to school from him. If this goes on, then you will soon move to him, said her friends. Maybe I will, she laughed. And that would be the end of our friendship. Kira made a sad face. Nothing can end a true friendship, Julia told her. By summer, Anthony and Julia were already living together seriously, and when the vacations came, the girl invited the guy to meet her parents. He immediately agreed, because he had serious plans for the girl. Mom, Dad, meet Anthony. This is Anthony. I told you about him. They went to her house when they arrived. Daughter, You should have at least warned her that you were not coming alone, her mother said reproachfully. I wanted it to be natural, so that no one would be prepared for anything, the girl answered her. They spent a month together in the city where Julia lived, slept in her room, and although her mother was against it, but Selena understood that her daughter had grown up, so she did not forbid her anything. It's your turn to meet my parents, Anthony told her as he left. Come on, 2 weeks before school starts, I will come to you, she told him because she wanted to be with her parents. Okay, I'll be waiting, and so bye. Call me, he kissed her, got on the train, and drove off. Julia returned home. Her mother looked at her adult daughter, realized that soon, most likely, she will get married. So how do you like your future son-in-law? She asked her mother. Even so, her mother tilted her head. He is very good. If you got to know him better, you would understand that, said the daughter. I believe you. The woman agreed with her. Next year, he will finish the 5th year, and then, while he is in the army, I will also finish my education, Julia told her mother. And where are you going to live? She asked her. I think in this city, Julia told her. That's good, her mother said, because her grandmother's apartment is empty, and she wanted you to have it all to yourself. It was the first time the woman had ever spoken of it. That's great news, Julia was pleased. She spent a month at home, and then, as promised, went to Anthony. Hello, she entered his apartment. Siriusha had only her mother. She met her warmly, hugged her, accepted her as her own daughter. Hello, Anthony has told me a lot about you, Natalie told her. I'm glad, she nodded her head. 2 weeks passed very quickly, and she got to know her mother better. The young people told her what their plans were. Anthony, you have chosen a very nice girl, praised his mom. Okay, do not embarrass, he saw how Julia blushes. After these words, the young man and the girl, the day before the start of school, got together and went. She to the dormitory, he to his apartment, which was still ready to rent for a year. Can't we move in together already? He asked her. No, Anthony, let's hold off, all in good time, she told him. Okay, he kissed her and they parted outside the dormitory. After that, every day it was either her at his place or him at hers. They met, went to caves, socialized with friends, everything was very good. New Year's Eve was celebrated at Julia's parents' house, and Anthony's mother also came there to meet them. It was nice to be in such warm company, Selena said to Natalie. I'm glad our families are united too, the woman said. I'm leaving in May, and when I come back, I want to take your daughter as my wife, Anthony began to say. That's how long it will take, Selena sighed. Nothing, while the service, study, and everything else. The time will pass quickly, said her daughter. She looked at her chosen one, and she felt good that now they were all sitting together and communicating as a family. Yes, I agree that you will have no time to relax, Selena nodded her head. The future in-laws spent 3 whole days together, and when it was time to part ways, neither one wanted to do it. Anthony, I love you, were the 2 young people. And how I love you, he kissed the girl and pressed her to him. Spring passed very quickly. May came, followed by graduation. After that, Anthony received a summons, and now he was going to go to the army. Are we going to do a send-off? Julia asked the boy. He probably shrugged his shoulders. Okay, Julia nodded her head. She thought about where and how it could be organized. Not 2 weeks later, Natalie, with the help of Selena, Julia's mother, was setting the tables. They were expecting guests. Julia, open up. Anthony heard a knock on the door. Now she was welcoming friends of her favorite person. They'd all sat down at the table together, the young guys and gals toasting to a successful service, and also to Julia's waiting for him. I see you off as if not to the army, but to war, the girl told him. Do not worry, my dear. Everything will pass quickly, he promised her. Anthony did not need anyone and nothing today. The most important thing was to be near his beloved, with whom he planned not to see for the next 2 years. In the morning, on the station platform, they hugged each other. I love you, and I will wait for you, she told him. I promised to write, he answered her. The train rumbled by, and the young man jumped on the footboard. He sent air kisses to Julia, to his mother, and to all who were at his send-off. And then the train moved, and he went from her. Only now the girl felt the tears come to her eyes. Cry, don't hold it in, her mother told her. Okay, Julia stepped aside, the tears flowing without ceasing. She realized that she would not see her beloved for a long time. The girl decided to hit the study, not to think about anything. Summer ended quickly. She helped her mother, then came the fall, and this study. She wrote Anthony every day and received letters from him, which were permeated with love. "Shall we go for a walk?" Kira called her. "No, I won't go anywhere. We have a lot of assignments. We still have to write a term paper," the girl said. She didn't want to set herself up and go somewhere. "All right, as you like," and we went. Nellie and Kira waved to her and left the room. But Julia wasn't bored. She was reading her lover's letters. She did other things. It was New Year's vacation time. She came home, her parents welcomed her, and Natalie was there again. "I couldn't stay at home alone, so I decided to come to you," she said. Yes, of course, Selena had met Natalie. Their families had become so close that now they couldn't even remember the time when they weren't related. "What if Anthony comes over and you two aren't together?" her mother told her later. "Well, you and Natalie are friends, so why don't you continue to be friends? Although I don't think Anthony and I will break up," Julia was sure. Time flew fast. It was already summer. When the girl came home, she offered her mother to return her grandmother's vegetable garden. "What's gotten into you all of a sudden?" Selena didn't understand. "I do not know. I want something to occupy myself," answered her daughter. The whole family went to the dacha, as they called it. They made beds there, planted everything. Everything was the same as before, with Grandma. "I don't believe that so many years have passed," sat down on a log the girl, and closed her eyes with her hands. "All people leave this world." Her mother sat down beside her. "Anthony will be back soon," her daughter told her. "Not soon enough," her mother stroked her head. The last year at the Institute was very difficult. It was necessary to start writing a diploma, several term papers, as well as sessions, GOS, and everything else. But Julia got through it all, and when she had her graduation, she stood at graduation and looked only at the front door. She believed he should come today. And when the ceremony was over, she saw him, all handsome in his military uniform. "Darling," she ran to him. He pressed her to him, and they stood together for a long time. There was still no one in the hall, so Anthony pulled Julia away from him, slipped his hand into his pocket, took out a small box, got down on one knee, and asked her to marry him. "I accept," she clapped her hands. The girl had indeed waited a long time for this. Now the two happy people stopped by Natalie's house, sat at her table, and then drove to the town where Julia lived. "Mama, Papa, we have arrived," shouted the girl in the customary manner. "Come on in, darlings," went the mother out into the hall. She had been roughly expecting them in these numbers. "Look," Julia showed her her ring finger. "Jesus, honey, congratulations," their mother hugged them both. Julia was very happy to have her favorite people by her side, and soon she was going to marry one of them. "So, where are you going to live?" her mother asked her. "I don't know. If you let us, we'll take the place where grandmother used to live," the daughter said. "Of course we will. Grandma left you this apartment." Selena was happy for her children. "You know what I want to tell you, parents? You are the best." Julia hugged them. She and Anthony drove to the apartment where her grandmother used to live. "I haven't been here since she died," she confessed to the young man. "Are you having a hard time?" he asked her. "A little bit," she admitted honestly. "And what are we going to do about it?" he asked her. "Nothing. We'll change everything here so that nothing reminds me of her." Julia walked around the apartment and touched everything with her hands. "Oh, look, and here is this picture, which all my childhood stressed me." She pointed to the picture where Ivan Tsarevich rides on the gray wolf. "A very old painting, I see." Anthony touched it with his hands. "Yes, let's take it down so that it doesn't remind me of my childhood," the girl asked him. When they took the painting off the wall, they saw a small door behind it, as if it were a safe. "What is it?" Anthony asked her. "I don't know. It's the first time I've seen it," she said. "Come on, let's open it." He looked at her. "Okay, come on." The girl reached out her hand and opened the door. Inside was something like a photo album. "What is it?" Anthony asked. "Strange," said the girl. "I don't see anything strange," her future husband told her. "Just all the photos grandmother kept in her bag, and here is a photo album. Some other interesting." She took it out, went and sat on the bed. When Julia opened it, she turned white. After that, she started to reread everything it said. It was a kind of grandmother's diary, and why hadn't she found it before? "Shall I leave you?" Anthony asked her. "Yes, if you don't mind," she asked him. "Okay, out of the way," he went outside. Julia sat, looking through, and rereading everything in the scrapbook. Here's her grandmother young. Here she is getting a job at the local factory. This is after high school. Here's a postcard of some kind. That was the first piece of news. What did it all mean? Julia couldn't understand. She flipped through the pages, and the third page was the most interesting. There was a picture of her grandmother standing next to a man of Asian appearance, signed Zhang Feng Wei at the bottom. And underneath the photo was a letter of confession. "Darling, I can't stay here all the time. I'm expected back home, so I have to leave you behind. Always your Vi." Julia sat there, looking at it all and crying. So that's where it came from, she realized. The beginning detailed how two Koreans had come to town, how everyone laughed at their names, and afterward, one was spelled Victor and the other Frederick. Julia couldn't believe that this was really the whole story about her grandmother. She had always been the perfect person for her, and now such a thing was being revealed. "My beloved Victor, I've missed you so much. I decided to write, though I don't know whether this letter will reach you or we will never see or hear from each other," wrote her grandmother, and it was pasted under the photo of the two of them. There was also an envelope on which it was written in red letters, "Returned to sender." Tears came to the girl's eyes. She realized that her grandmother had loved and waited for the same man all her life. "So that's why I have such a cut eye." She touched her slightly swollen eyelids. Julia sat back and looked through the album further. The further she flipped through, the more and more she realized. Didn't Mom know about this? She asked herself. But Julia wasn't in a hurry to show it to anyone. She wanted to figure it out for herself first. She turned page after page and learned more and more about her beloved grandmother. "Hi, my love. I thought I'd write to you. I'm doing well. I don't know how you are. You probably blame me for everything, and I deserve it. But I can't do anything else. I have a family, a house, children, and I can't come back to you." Victor wrote to her. Each letter was accompanied by a postcard or a photo. "How much I love you, and I do not hold a grudge against you. I know that it is difficult for you, but you hold on. I love you," Grandma answered him. And since the letter was here, she was just answering, but she didn't send anything. "Beloved, look at the views from our window." He sent another picture, and everything was really beautiful there. And then she would reply to him, describing how she felt. While Julia was reading this picture book, she cried more than once. Finally, she got to the last page, and there was a picture of her mother, just as she had suspected. "Anthony," she looked outside from the window. "Yes, are you finished?" He was sitting on the bench. "Come in, please," Julia asked him. The young man quickly went up to the floor. "And what did you find out there?" he wondered. "Look," she showed him the last photo, which was also accompanied by a caption. "And what is this?" He did not understand. "This is my grandmother, and in her arms is my mother." Julia looked at the young man. "I see, and so," he pointed at the man, "it's her father." It turns out so. The girl was still in shock. "Wow, so that's how you got those eyes," he reminded her. He had asked her that the first time they met. "Only I don't understand why Grandma was hiding all this." Julia didn't know what to do now, whether her mother knew about it or not. "Well, what to guess now? You should go and ask her directly," he advised his future wife. "I'll do so. You can work here alone, and I'll go to my mother?" she asked him. "Okay," he agreed. Julia took the album, put it in a bag, and went to her parents. She had a lot of things to think about while she was walking. What, where, and how. "Why are you here?" Selena was surprised when she saw her daughter coming home. "I need to talk to you." She looked intently at her mother. "Talk. I'm listening to you." Her mother was worried. She couldn't understand what was going on with her daughter. Did they have a fight with Anthony? After all, she came alone. "Let's go to the kitchen," was puzzled daughter. They went into the kitchen, sat down at the table. "Do you know who your father is?" the first thing the girl asked. "You know I don't. It seems to me that you and I had already talked about it," her mother told her. "Yeah, and today we went to Grandma's house. I decided to change everything there. And the first thing I did was take down this old painting right here. She pulled it out first. Yeah, I remember it. It was hanging in the little room, Selena confirmed. So, and behind it was something like a safe. Behind the painting, the girl pulled out an album. What is it? Selena didn't understand. An album where grandmother kept her most precious memories, Julia said. I don't understand. Selena looked up at her daughter. Look at it, Julia advised her. The woman opened the cover and immediately saw a Korean man in the photo and read all the captions below the photo. And most importantly, you'll still have time to read it all. Julia opened to the penultimate page. There Olivia stood with a little girl in her arms, in whom the woman recognized herself. And at the bottom was an inscription that she would never forget the one who had given her the most precious gift of her life. What, you mean this man, my father? Tears spurted from Selena's eyes. She wouldn't lie, especially since they never saw each other again. He sent her postcards and hers never reached him. She showed the inscriptions. Julia, I don't believe my mother could be like this, the woman said through tears. But this album says otherwise. She showed her all the new letters and photos. Yes, I see it all. Selena turned to the window and stared at one point. And what are we going to do? The daughter asked, and looked at her mother. I don't know, she answered honestly. Listen, do you want to know the relatives or the man himself, if he is still alive? Julia was very interested in all this. I want to, but I'm afraid, Selena admitted honestly. Well, let me do it myself, her daughter asked. To be honest, you really shocked me today, Selena said. You can't imagine how shocked I was when I saw all this. Julia remembered the emotion she felt when she first saw it all. I imagine Selena heard the front door slam. It was Barry coming home. He made his way into the kitchen. The women had told him everything. He just didn't say anything, sat down on a chair, took a long look, and didn't say anything. And I wondered who our Russian girl had those eyes in. He looked at Julia. And Anthony asked me about it too, the girl confessed. What are you going to do? He looked at the women. I want to apply for Wait For Me. The girl did not want to hide anything from her parents. This is good, but imagine that the relatives on the other side will be against it, will not offend you. Immediately warned her father. No, she was sure of it. Good, then go ahead. Barry wished her good luck. While they were talking, Selena sat like that, staring at one point. Julia packed up all her things and headed back home. She didn't know that Anthony had peeled off almost all the wallpaper, and it wouldn't be comfortable for them to sleep there. Oh, it's so dusty. The girl entered the apartment. Yeah, I don't think we should stay here. He came over and hugged her. Then let's go back to her parents, Julia laughed. It was funny for her to go back and forth today. Okay, we'll do it there, they agreed. When the young people entered Barry and Selena's apartment, they were surprised that they were going from one apartment to another. But when they explained that their apartment was being renovated, they were understood and were not kicked out. Selena didn't want to talk to anyone today. She went to her room and spent the rest of the evening there. During this time, Julia went to the show's website. She entered all the information to apply. When the form opened up to her, she began to type in the first name, last name, middle name, who she was looking for. The girl filled out the application on her mother's behalf. When it was finished, she hit the submit button. That's it. Now all that's left to do is wait. She turned to Anthony. Yes, and I hope it will happen very quickly, he was sure. Good if it does, she smiled with just her lips. After that, the young people went to bed. The girl thought that tomorrow she would already have some kind of answer. Even if it was negative, it was also a result. She pressed herself against Anthony. Only one day had passed, but today so many events had happened that it seemed to Julie that a whole week had passed. The morning is wiser. Anthony kissed her and they turned off the light. Julia couldn't sleep for a long time. She kept thinking about her grandmother, how she could keep this secret for so many years. And with these thoughts, she fell asleep. In her dream, she dreamt of the same Chang Feng. He was reaching out to her, asking for something. Julia woke up in tears. First thing in the morning, she went to the computer to see what was wrong with her application. Anthony, she screamed in a voice that didn't sound right. Why are you yelling? He jumped up from the bed. I got an answer. She stared at the monitor, unable to believe this was really happening. What did they say? He walked over to the monitor. The screen said they needed to contact the program editors. Julia didn't think long. She picked up her phone and dialed the number that was listed in the reply message. "Hello," shouted the girl as soon as there was an answer on the other end. "Did you apply?" began to speak in a monotone voice. Julia even thought it was a recording. "Yes, I found an old photo album at my grandmother's house, and there are pictures of her and my mom, as well as her father, who no one knew about until yesterday." The girl spoke quickly. "So, is everything on the application form correct?" asked her on the other end. "Yes," she nodded her head, though it was unnecessary. "We will check everything and get back to you," said goodbye to Julia, and she hung up. "I don't believe it can all come out so quickly." She looked at her husband-to-be. "Why not?" He didn't understand. "I don't know." The girl was worried. After that, they went to the kitchen to have breakfast. There, Selena started asking for details. If Julia couldn't sleep at night, and then she dreamed various things, Selena couldn't sleep at all that night. She kept wondering how her mother could do such a thing. "Now they will figure it out, and then it will be clear what to do next," the daughter said. The apartment needed to be renovated. The wedding was scheduled for the end of summer. By this time, I wanted to finish everything. But the young people, or rather, Julia, did not have a thought about repairs. All she could think about now was her mother and her father. "Well, are you not going there again today?" Anthony asked her. "I will." There was nothing left for the girl to do. "Then let's go." He was waiting for her. In her grandmother's apartment, the wallpaper had already been torn off. Now they had to prime the walls, and they could glue new ones. "To the store?" Anthony asked after the priming was finished. "Isn't that enough for today?" Julia asked. "If you don't want to glue, then at least help you choose what to buy." He knew he couldn't handle it himself. "Okay, let's go," she agreed. In the store, they spent a good 3 hours. All could not decide on the type of wallpaper. Finally, they chose one that was sufficient in the warehouse, and they both liked it. So they went home. "Where have you been so long?" Selena met them. First in the apartment and then in the store, Julia told her. "Had you at least eaten?" Her mother was worried. "No, but believe me, it wasn't about that." Julia hugged the woman. "It's okay. I don't think I'm as worried as you are," she told her daughter. "It's okay." They walked to the kitchen, had something to eat, and then went to their room. "What's up?" Anthony looked at Julia. "Nothing." She looked at the monitor. "That's okay." He was undressing for bed. "Yeah, I think so too," she admitted to him. So 2 weeks passed. During this time, young people, not without the help of parents, made repairs in one room. Of course, it was cosmetic, but it was enough. After a while, Julia got a phone call. "Hello," she picked up the phone. "Hello, have you contacted the program?" They asked her. "Yes, I'm looking for my grandfather and my mother for my father," she said. "Okay, everything that was asked on your parameters, we checked. Now you need to take a DNA test. And only then we will invite you to the program," frustrated her editor. "Great, when and where to come?" Julia wondered. When everything was explained to her, she told her mother her presence was not necessary, but she still wanted to go. "Mom, we need to buy tickets." They came home. "It's mandatory, Selena." As much as she wanted to know the truth, she dreaded it. "Please, so much work has already been done. Let's not back down," her daughter begged her. "Okay, you're taken," agreed the mother. 2 days later, they were already sitting at the airport, waiting for their flight. "Are you nervous?" Julia asked her mother. "I won't say yes, but I can't say definite no." "I can't say," the woman said, and didn't look at her daughter. They flew in by invitation, went into the lab, took all the necessary tests. "If it turns out to be your father, well, he's still alive. So if you thought you were an orphan, you can forget about it," the lab technician told her. "What are you talking about? How old is he now?" Celine looked at him with big eyes. "Asians are long-lived," he smiled. Selena and Julia went outside. They breathed in the fresh air. They had to fly home again. "So what do you think?" the mother asked her daughter. "Let's not think anything. Just wait for the results." She didn't want to be nervous for a while. "Okay," she agreed with her. They flew home quietly. Anthony and Julia went about the renovation of the apartment, and Barry and Selena went on with their normal lives. Time dragged by very slowly. For a period of time, Selena and her daughter even seemed to forget that they had an important case going on somewhere. They were distracted by renovations and wedding preparations. Do you think we'll pick out a dress here? The daughter said to her mom. I don't know, but can we at least look? Selena asked. Okay, they went to another store. But Julia didn't believe, not at all, that they would be able to find anything. They were measuring one wedding dress after another when the girl's phone rang. Hello. She put her finger to her lips, showing her mother to be quiet. Hello. Did you apply to find a relative and take a DNA test? A male voice spoke up. Yes, you're right, glanced Julia at her mother. We invite you to the TV program that will be held in 2 weeks, said the same voice in the receiver. Thank you, we will definitely be there, disconnected Julia. And what? Waited the mother for her verdict. They're inviting us, Julia smiled. They need a show, we are test subjects, said the woman. Why the negativity? The girl didn't understand. Well, why? Now on our television only, so, was sure Selena. Okay, let it be so, but we'll still go, was sure Julia. Well, you started it. You decide whether we go or not, Selena said as if she didn't want to. That's great. The girl was happy. They got everything ready for the wedding. They bought tickets to Washington, and now they just have to wait for the date they need to leave. If it turns out that he is your father and my grandfather, he will even make it to our wedding in time, Julia said. Yes, the woman agreed with her. And that day came. They arrived at the studio, now sat, and waited for their exit to be announced. The supposed relatives did not see each other. They were in different rooms. Julia was the first to be called into the studio and was asked what and how she had learned. She began her story with the fact that she was brought up with her grandmother, loved her more than anyone else on Selene. Then how she was passing away, well, and at the very end, how they came to the apartment and found the album. And you think your mother is the daughter of J and G Feng Wei? They asked her a question. Here, she handed them the album that belonged to her grandmother. You can see for yourself. Yes, indeed, it seems to be true. The host flipped through the pages. So it is true, Julia almost cried. Well, at the end of the program, it will be clear. It was obvious that the presenter was making a show out of it. Now Julia believed that there was no victor, that now their story would be told, and then they would say that they took a test, but it was negative. The girl sat on the couch, looked at the presenter, and waited to see what would happen next. Well, let's see a fragment from the life of our heroes, said the young man who hosted the show. On the screen, the footage flashed, which was clearly not the US. Selena saw it too from the room where she was sitting. Tears came to Julia's eyes. Had they really found the person who was in the pictures of her grandmother's album? Well, you'll recognize someone in these shots. The presenter looked at the picture and then shifted his gaze to Julia. She was silent because no one had been shown yet. She looked with all her eyes, but she didn't see anyone. Why don't you say anything? The man who was in charge looked at her. I don't know what to say, she said honestly. Well, say something. Do you even believe that we found someone? He asked as if he was mocking her. Are you kidding me? She was ready to fall to the ground in shame. Why did she believe these people? They just wanted to make a show and they did. Why, no one is mocking, shrugged the presenter. He was looking at the screen as well as Julia. And at the same moment, an old man appeared on the screen. He was sitting on a bench near the house. And yes, he remotely resembled the one Julia had seen in the picture. The girl's heart beat faster, her hands shook. Did you recognize him? The host saw her excitement. I don't know, she was fiddling with her handkerchief. I think you recognize someone. The host sat down next to her. Is he here? The girl looked at him. Yes, he nodded and smiled, but we'll call your mother here first. The music started playing and Selena walked into the studio. Hello, the host said hello to her. Good evening, she sat down next to her daughter. Well, how do you feel? Did we find your father? Looked at her, who led the program. I don't know if Selena was ready to burst into tears. But I do know, Zhang Feng Wei, come here to the studio, he called out. No way, Julia clutched her face. We can do anything. Miracles happen. Everyone in the studio applauded. An elderly man came out here. He stood in front of Selena and Julia. He was crying. Daughter, forgive me, he said in broken Russian. Hello. Naturally, Selena did not perceive him in any way. So you want to know if this is your father or not? Asked the host. Of course, everyone was in suspense. Then I invite an expert here in the studio. He put out his hand. A woman came out who was holding an envelope in her hands. She stood in the middle of the room and looked around. After that, she took out the results from the envelope. So the alleged father, Jang Foon Wee, and the alleged daughter, Celine. The possibility of parentage is, she stopped talking and looked at the people present. Come on, Julia stepped forward. 99.9%. Applause erupted in the hall. Daughter, a man jumped up from his seat. I can't call you daddy. She stood up and walked over to him. They approached each other and embraced. The audience did not stop applauding. Julia sat looking at her mother and cried. So, what are you going to say now? The host came up to them. I can't tell you anything now. It was obvious that Selena was at a loss. Why did you find your father? The presenter asked her. I knew all my life that I didn't have one, and now I have one, and I'm just shocked. Selena looked at the man. He was holding her hand. Well, what do you think? He turned to Victor, as he was known here. I wasn't expecting it. He said, I was coming here for an internship and I met Olivia. We were only with her for a few months and then I moved back. I wrote to her, but she didn't answer me. All of this was told by a man with a heavy accent. So how come she didn't reply? Julia put in a word. Here, look at this. Chang Feng picked up the album and started flipping through it, tears flowing from his eyes. She must have misread my handwriting, so she misspelled the address, he said regretfully. That's it. Now you know you have a daughter, and you know you have a father. How do you feel about it? The presenter continued his show. Incomprehensibly, Selena looked at him. She wanted to leave the studio sooner. Outside in the car, her husband was waiting for her along with Anthony. They said goodbye to everyone, got up, and walked out of the studio. When they were outside, Selena called her father into the car. I didn't come alone, he said. Who did you come with? Julia became agitated. My children and grandchildren are with me, just like you. We all came together, he said. And where are you staying? Selena asked. In a hotel, he answered. So let's go there quickly. The women couldn't wait to see their relatives. Together they drove to the hotel, and when they entered the room, their eyes became a little bigger than they were. It turned out that Selena's father had 6 children of his own, and they had several grown children of their own. Wow, that's a lot of family, Julia said. That's not all. There are still relatives back home. Chan Feng's children and grandchildren did not speak Russian, so they had to communicate through their grandfather. But even so, the relatives understood each other. I insist that you come to us, said Selena. She had lived with her mother, her husband, her daughter, and her mother-in-law, and no other relatives. And here, it turns out, she has a very large extended family. Children, do you mind? Grandpa turned to his family. Of course not, answered the oldest son, who could speak a little Russian. Together they booked tickets and drove to the town where Selena, Barry, and Julia lived. Natalie was invited to visit, as well as Selena's mother-in-law. All the extended family couldn't even fit in one apartment. And I want to tell you that you are just in time for our wedding, Julia told them. In a week's time there was going to be a celebration, and everyone who was here was invited. The week passed very quickly, and now Anthony and Julia stood before the registrar, and she asked them if they agreed to become husband and wife to each other. The young ones said yes, and then they exchanged rings. Next, everyone got into their cars and the fun began. First, they went to take pictures, then they went to the restaurant. Not a single person left the wedding. Everyone congratulated the newlyweds. Julia looked at all the relatives and could not believe that now she has so many relatives. How are you feeling? The newlyweds came home. Very well, she told her husband. They had arrived home, and now they wanted to discuss how everything had gone. The relatives were housed partly at Selena's, partly at the hotel. You know, Anthony, I am the happiest woman on Selene. She looked at her husband. And I'm happy because you're happy, he hugged her. You can imagine I lived for 20 years without one relative. I had a mom, dad, grandmother, and even then one died. And now, look how many relatives I have. But they are not to embrace, rejoiced Julia. The newlyweds talked a little more and went to bed. Tomorrow, they began a real adult life. In the morning, they went to their mother's house, and other relatives came up there too. They sat at the table for a while and then went to see the relatives off. At the airport, they all agreed that they would meet exactly 1 year later. But during that year, they would return phone calls and emails. I'm so happy to have you. Julia hugged everyone. And we're so glad, granddaughter, said her grandfather. When the plane left, everyone got in the car and drove home. I still can't believe that I have a father and so many brothers, nephews and grandnephews, Selena said. What can you do? You have to believe, her daughter hugged her. And it's all thanks to you, my sweetheart, her mom hugged her. Imagine how it happens in life. You have no one, and then one day in a whole family, Julia herself has not yet in her head that all these relatives appeared to her. Why did you take that picture? Mom was complaining about her daughter changing her grandmother's apartment. You know how much I loved her. I just wanted to change everything so it would be different, she told her. Yeah, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have found anyone. Selena shook her head. After that, everyone went home. Julia had to get a job. Anthony had already found a place too. They were all happy. Not 6 months later, Julia fell sick. You're pregnant? Her husband immediately looked at her. Why did you immediately think I was pregnant? It was just dizziness. She was a little scared. I really want you to be pregnant. Her husband looked at her. The next day, Julia went to the doctor. At first, she wanted to buy a test, but then she decided that the doctor would have a 100% result. Who's last in line to get pregnant? She asked in the hallway. One of the women answered her. She took the line, sat, and wondered how she would get into the office. And when she entered and sat down in front of the doctor, he looked at her through his glasses and asked her what she was complaining about. I'm pregnant, she told him. The delay at the test, how did you know that? He asked her. I just know, that's all. Julia felt like an idiot now. Okay, come to the chair and let's see, said the gynecologist. The girl undressed, climbed on the chair. The doctor began the examination, while he frowned his eyebrows, moved his lips. And when all finished, he went to the table and began to write. Doctor, what is it? She asked him. I'm afraid to be wrong, but I think you have a uterine myoma. He looked at her over his glasses. I don't understand. The patient looked at him. And what is not clear? I write you a referral to ultrasound. Only there you can determine whether your diagnosis is confirmed or not. He handed her a paper. How likely are you to be right? She was wondering. I can't answer your question. He was taking notes. Okay, thank you. The girl wanted to cry. She took the referral, went home. What's wrong with you? She went to her mother. Look, she handed her a paper. What's this? Mom started reading it. Here, I thought I was pregnant, Julia said. What do you think? She waited for her mom to tell her. We have to go for an ultrasound, she told her. No, Julia didn't want to know there was something wrong. Well, your problems, think. But sooner or later you'll have to go, Selena was sure of it. Oh, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Julia didn't want to bring it up. Why did you come to me then? Selena didn't understand. Just show. The daughter got up from the table and headed for the exit. Think, it's your life and your health, her mother said in her back. Good, she didn't even turn around. The girl walked home. She didn't look around, only at her feet. When she got home, she was greeted by Anthony. Well, what did the doctor tell you? He asked her. Nothing, not pregnant. She wouldn't tell him anything. Okay, why are you so crazy? He followed her. Don't go, please, she asked him. Okay, but can you tell me why you're so upset? He was interrogating her. Look in your purse, she told him. Now Anthony returned to the hallway. He took the report out of her purse, read it, went to the bedroom where Julia was. What do you think? She looked up at him. If you don't want to be examined, don't go. Anthony put his arm around his wife. Okay, she lay face down on the pillow and cried. What if it's true? He hugged her. And if it wasn't, she was impenetrable. I think we should go for an ultrasound and then suffer, Anthony told her. He didn't want to hurt his wife. He even felt sorry for her, but walking around in ignorance wasn't good either. Anthony, understand, I will not go to the operation, she told him. Who said anything about surgery? He didn't understand. You understand, if the ultrasound diagnosed that I have a myoma, then it will be necessary to go to surgery. She was sure of it. Well, let's wait a little, he agreed with her. And let's go to Korea, to my grandfather, she told him. Are you sure about that? He was just shocked at what she was suggesting. Of course I'm sure, she looked at him. Not 2 weeks later, Anthony and Julia were sitting in the airport, waiting to board their flight. Did you at least give them a heads up? Anthony asked her. Of course, we wouldn't have gone without it. I even called my mom with me, but she didn't agree. Julia told him she was very sad. Well, promise me when we get there, you'll go to the ultrasound. It was very important to him. Okay, I will definitely go to the ultrasound, but only when I decide and tune in, she told him and kissed him on the cheek. They flew to the relatives. They were met. Everything was as good as it could be. Grandpa, who had recently found a granddaughter, a daughter, a son-in-law, and all the other relatives, was very happy about it. Naturally, no one told him about his granddaughter's illness, but he didn't need to know. Anthony and Julia stayed there for exactly a week, then they came back. He went straight to work, and she was hesitant and couldn't get in the mood to go for an ultrasound. It had been almost 3 months since that appointment when she got the referral, and Julia was in the mood. She made an appointment for an ultrasound. She arrived, got in line. Who's last in line? She asked. What are you in for? She was asked by visitors who were already here. On pregnancy, she said, and let that she lied, but so that no one knew and did not pity her. Then you'll follow me, said one of the women. It turned out that that woman was second in line, and when she passed, Julia let 2 people go ahead of her. She was afraid to hear the diagnosis, but when there was no one left in the hallway and the girl lab technician came out and invited her into the office, there was nothing left to do but go in. Julia laid down on the couch. The doctor took her referral. She read it, curled her lips, and began to look. The woman who was doing the ultrasound, her name was Leslie. After a moment, she smiled and said, Girl, I congratulate you. You are pregnant. You are 18 weeks. After that, she smiled for a long time. Julia cried. Why are you crying? The woman who did the ultrasound asked her. Did you see what my diagnosis was? She told her about the referral. How can a doctor make a diagnosis without an ultrasound? Leslie didn't understand. That diagnosis was in doubt, and I'm telling you you're pregnant. She looked at her and smiled. Julia's mood immediately lifted. What am I supposed to do now? She was being silly. Go and get registered, Leslie told her. Okay, I hear you. Julia got up off the couch. I wish you'd happiness. The doctor looked at her. Thank you. The girl was grateful to her. She drove home, and inside everything was blooming and smelling. Julia couldn't wait to tell her husband and mom that they would soon become a grandmother and father. Hello, my love. She entered the apartment. Honey? He looked at her questioningly. Yes, she nodded her head. Yes, what? Anthony didn't understand. You're going to be a daddy soon. She walked up to him and kissed him. Love, I'm happy. He jumped up, hugged her, and kissed her. We have to tell Mom. She was crying. Why are you crying? He didn't understand. I'm happy, she told her husband. And I'm happy. He spun her around. They packed up and drove first to Julia's parents' house. Mommy, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother soon, she told her. My darling, I'm so happy for you. She hugged her son-in-law and daughter. And I am so happy that this myoma has turned into a child. The girl rejoiced. We need to tell the grandparents, although this word was unfamiliar to them, but they were saying it now. Julia started calling her second grandmother first, the one who cried as soon as she heard the news. And then the call was to her grandfather, who first laughed and then cried. I will definitely come to the birth, he promised. Listening, but what if we have a Korean baby? Anthony suddenly realized. So what? She looked at him. No, nothing now, he winked at her. What do you mean? She didn't understand his answer. They drove home, hailed a cab, got in it, held hands. What did you mean? She hinted at what he'd said about the Korean kid. No. Imagine what would have happened if we hadn't found out your grandfather was Korean, he laughed. What would have happened? She didn't know what he meant. Imagine I come to the hospital and 2 Russian people have a baby born narrow-eyed and black-haired, he said. Yes, so what? You wouldn't believe me, she wondered. Anything is possible, they talked. It turns out you don't believe me. She removed her hand from his arm. You misunderstand me. He wanted to take it back. No, Julia got out of the car. Darling, wait, think about it. It's true, he was catching up with her. I don't know, she went into the driveway. The next day, Julia went to the gynecology clinic, got registered. Now she started her follow-up. About the conversation with her husband, she did not forget. The girl began to read literature. It turned out that her husband was right. National peculiarities are always manifested only after a generation. Now she understood what Anthony meant. I'm sorry, she was already 7 months pregnant. For what? He didn't remember anything. I realize now that you were right then, she hugged him. I love you, he kissed her. And I love you. She couldn't believe things could be so good. When Julia was 7 months pregnant, she was admitted to the hospital. She didn't refuse because she wanted her baby to be born healthy. An IV, a nurse came into the room. Good, Julia smiled towards her. Oh, what an unusual appearance you have. The girl looked at her. Yes, my grandfather is Korean. Julia said it as if she was proud of it. That's exotic, the girl told her. That's proud. He worked in our town in a factory as a chief engineer, she bragged. You're a smart girl for having such an opinion about your grandfather. Now the girl was already proud of her patient. For 2 whole months, Julia was lying in labor, but she did not regret it, as long as all was well with the child. When it all started, she was taken to the prenatal ward. The fetus is large, the head nurse warned her. And what to do? The girl wrinkled her nose in pain. Now the doctor will come and tell you everything, she said. For now, they only supported the flow of labor. Breathe, breathe, the doctor shouted at her. I can't, she cried, it hurts. Everything will be fine, he tried, but nothing worked. To be on the safe side, the gynecologist told Julia to go to surgery. There she was given anesthesia and the surgery began. I don't feel well, she screamed. Be patient, sister, the surgeon and the gynecologist appealed to her. When the baby was taken out of the mother's body, the doctor looked at it for a long time. He saw her husband come to her. He was definitely not a Kazakh, not a gypsy or anything else. He was definitely Russian. Julia, are you sure you won't have any problems with your husband? He showed her the child. My favorite, Maximka, she said, and turned her head to the right. So you didn't answer my question. He waited. What could be the problem? She didn't understand. Your child clearly doesn't look Russian, he said bluntly. Because my grandfather is Korean, she smiled, though she felt bad. Now everything is clear, he handed the child to the pediatrician. After that, she was moved to a room, and then the baby was moved there. A couple hours later, Anthony came in. Where's my son? He was standing under the window. Now Julia got up. And my grandson? The girl heard him. Wait, she was in pain, but she was ready to show this child to everyone. Grandpa said he would come when you were released from the hospital, said a happy Selena. I love you all, she put her hand to the window. 3 days later, Julia and the baby were discharged. When they left the hospital, they were greeted by Grandpa Victor with flowers.